Welcome to Plat Chat VALORANT episode 21.
There's a total lack of excitement, hype, or anything in that intro.
Just sad intro.
The groanings of a broken man.
When Golden Boy was on one of our episodes, when we finished recording, he was like, "You know, Bren, you're an okay host, but you just don't do anything that a host should do. You know, because you don't bring the hype. You don't really have any sort of cadence. You just kind of exist and direct the conversation." And that's true. That's my hosting style. Welcome to Plat Chat VALORANT episode 21. Thank you to Shinobi. You can see we've got a special guest. Shinobi's joining us from Cloud9. Bish Bash Bosh. You know, we're apparently mortal enemies according to Josh's Twitch chat. You know, I keep predicting against Cloud9. They keep winning, except when I predict them and then they lose, which is unfortunate. But that's the aspect. That's the way the world works. It's the way that my predictions work. So we've got a variety of questions to talk about. But we're going to start, I guess, all about you, Shinobi, and talking about Cloud9 in general as a team, because you didn't really have the finish you guys wanted in First Strike, obviously, because you didn't make the main event. Quite disappointing. I think a lot of people expected you guys to make it quite far. Wasn't the case, unfortunately. Can you shed any light onto like what exactly happened during the First Strike event for this to take place? Because as far as I'm concerned, like as a casual watcher, in my eyes, like Cloud9 was on an upward trajectory. You guys like had been making improvements in terms of executions. Almost every faculty of the game, you were improving. What went wrong in your eyes, though, for you guys not to qualify?
I mean, bluntly, we just played like shit. But so, something Wyatt actually said when I was watching you guys last week. He was like, if there was a team that was going to overthink something outside of the game, it would be us. And I think that was a big factor. Like when we lost to Renegades, instead of just being like, guys, we played bad. Like we lost a lot of, like, honestly, we lost that game on split. We lost because of like individual mistakes. It wasn't really like a gameplay or like overarching game plan. And instead of like looking at it at face value, we were just like, blow it up, just fucking change everything about, excuse my language, but change everything about how we play. And
carry on. We ain't sponsored yet.
Yeah. We just like, especially too with the changes, because a lot of how we were using Killjoy was like setups that I came up with and things that we were kind of using. Like we would, except on Split, I think Split's probably the only map where we were playing it kind of like not global utility. It was kind of like, Mitch, go here, like you use your utility like this, here's our setups, you lock down the site. Where like on other maps like Ascent and Bind, we were a lot more like, we're using the turret, especially on attack. Like we would take map control and then like leave the Killjoy turret, kind of like how you would use a Cypher trip, and then we would go back and regroup and like hit a position. But you can't do that with the changes. And we had like what 3 or 4 days I think between the First Strike, the first qualifier, and we hadn't played on the new patch. No excuse, because every other team had the same opportunities, I guess, right? Same equal playing field. But I mean, we just didn't really feel that comfortable on the patch, and we just played pretty poorly, I would say, in the second qualifier.
Talk to me a bit more about the Renegades game then, because that was it was a really close loss. Even though it says 0-2, you guys, in my opinion, from the outside looking in, you look like the best team in that first qualifier. You look like the best team in North America up until the point at which you lost to Renegades. And it was like a big upset result, but you can see like Renegades are a team that a lot of other people were having some difficulties with as well. TSM were consistently losing Split to them too. And other teams in the league are, memeing on them, which is part of the reason that that they're a decent team that's given them some tough results, because otherwise people wouldn't even bother talking about them. So why was that loss in particular like a blow it up loss? Is it just because it was First Strike and you guys were so close to getting through?
I mean, honestly, I think that it was kind of an ego from some people on the team. Like we felt like we were much better than them, and that like we can't lose to this team. Like we shouldn't lose to this team. I mean, we didn't I didn't underestimate them. Like we did a lot of preparation, me and Marcus, our coach. I knew how they were gonna play. We had like a good game plan. For Split, I said they honestly just outplayed us. Like we weren't really ready for what they did, and a big part of the thing that I mentioned where we said kind of like we overthought outside of the server was like we knew that they, from playing against them, that was obvious that they had like anti-stratted like the way that we were playing like on Ascent, and we were like, oh, like if these guys were doing this, like we felt like maybe our playstyle had been figured out with like the things that we've been doing, so we kind of wanted to bring something new to the second qualifier. Obviously, didn't work, but that was kind of like our thought process. We just felt like things that we were doing was like we put in a lot of work for the qualifier and like the first one, and I think we showed that when we're playing a style that we're comfortable with, that we can be the best. I mean, we beat all the teams that people would consider to be the top 3, top 4.
Yeah, it was an incredibly impressive run.
Yeah.
All green, all wins up until that one game. And yeah, I agree with what you had said as well, Shinobi, about it being more about individual mistakes. I recall, I think when we were watching that game live, Josh, we felt the same way, that the Cloud9 were playing well in terms of the team play.
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
Something I wanted to ask in regards to the second qualifier and some of the role swaps, like who are making those overarching decisions? Specifically, Mitch going to Cypher seemed fairly unorthodox.
Yeah, so he had actually, it was something we talked about as a team. Like we never like force anything on people on the team. Like we kind of always have like an open discussion. A lot of time I'll lead kind of like, this is what I think we should do, or like these are like agent compositions that I think can be strong for how we want to play. But Mitch said that he didn't really feel comfortable playing Killjoy like on bind, so we had switched him to Cypher. And I don't know, we just kind of felt, honestly, we felt the pressure at the time for the practice. Like we had very little time adjusting to, because a lot of the teams still run Cypher, and we were like one of the only teams that were using like Killjoy exclusively, and we just did a pretty bad job at adapting to the patch changes. We had like, again, we didn't have that much time to play on it, so I think it hit our team more, and we tried to like change, because Tens was not really feeling like he wanted to jet op as much. He felt like Reyna was suiting his playstyle a lot more, so we tried to like make a lot of these changes on short notice to like make everyone feel comfortable, but we just didn't really like get an identity that fit with like our overall gameplay that works for us. So
do you feel like you do you feel like you learned things that are applicable in the future? Like what I'm trying to get at here is, do you think this is like a general rule that should be observed by teams, that they can learn from Cloud9, of trusting match results more than like one game's data point?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, really, when you look at the game is always changing. Like, there's patches all the time, and like I think, unlike in CS, I mean, a lot of teams, the meta is very stagnant. So like, it's, if you're going down in form over a period of time, it's probably more of a result of like things going on in the team. But I feel like in this game, you could probably have a patch that's just not your patch. Like you play poorly for like a month or two, and then some changes happen, and now you're doing well. It's really hard, I think, to gauge in this game like how you're performing based on like a couple matches. I definitely think that's something that's like to learn from, right? Not base it on some results. You have to look at the big picture, which, I mean, we knew that. We just, I don't know, we just made some poor decisions, and it cost us heavily. So
yeah, I imagine that it's more difficult in this game to try and kind of separate the signal from the noise, because you have to try and make the changes to stay ahead of the pack and stay ahead of the meta. So sometimes you can just overthink yourselves.
And it's funny, because I think we really did that going into the first qualifier. Like, we were the only team that was basically not playing Sova at all, and we were showing that like you can play in the meta right now without having Sova if you have like a good game plan for how you want to use it. Because we were doing a lot of like flash and dash plays with like the Breach and the Jett, and we were using the Breach, I think, in a way that a lot of teams weren't using him. And we
and then you swap back to Sova for
qualifier. It's, I think, like, again, like Wyatt said, we got a little bit in our heads. Something that we really valued was like pairing Breach with Jett. We feel like that's a strong combo. So when Tens was really like feeling more like he wanted to play more Reyna, we kind of like, I think if we use Sova, we can kind of like enhance the way that we play around the Reyna. But we should have just, in hindsight, we should have just went with what we know and just fixed the things that we were making mistakes on, and not really care too much about like the changes of the patch and things like that. Just play our game. But yeah, you learn.
That's-
I was gonna ask, looking in the second qualifier, one of the interesting matchups for me was you guys versus Space Station, because you had 2 full BO3s. You played 5 maps. What was it about that team specifically that was giving you guys so much trouble? Because they weren't really, I mean, they were on my radar before, but I never particularly thought of them as a team that could compete at that caliber.
I mean, they played a really good game. I think it goes both ways because we don't really practice against them. They don't practice against us. But I think the play style of like the tier 1 teams that you would say, like, you know, the top teams, we have way more experience playing against them. So we have like a familiarity with like the things they're gonna do, and we have a good handle on like how they want to play. And some of these like tier 2 teams, like these smaller orgs, they have really good players mechanically, and they're willing to just take the fights, and they're gonna go and take risks. And I mean, they just out aimed us really hard, I would say. And tactically, they were pretty good as well. Like on Bind, I think they had a really good grasp of how we were going to play and how they wanted to execute their game plan. And then the first BO3, when we played them on a set, I think we got 2-0 the first BO3, I believe. Yeah. We tried doing the Cypher experiment on a set, and we were just like, this ain't it. Let's just run the Killjoy again. And I think when we played Killjoy the second time, we handled them pretty well, I would say. But yeah, I mean, they played a good game, and I think that they're a solid team.
Pretty interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think we were going to transition to this later, but I think it's a good question to ask you now, which is, I don't know if is the topic title "Quick Questions for Shinobi"? Is that a lower third we have? Is that a thing?
Sure.
But what it was is First Strike a good tournament as a player playing in it? Because one of the things that you've been commenting on, been hidden on, recurring like over and over again, it seems like, is the fact that essentially this game, it moves quick in terms of the patches and in terms of I suppose even a tournament format. Like, how was it for you as a player and as a team, I guess, as Cloud9, playing in First Strike? Because it was a lot of games if you were a North American team. If you were qualifying in both of them, going through open qualifiers and closed as well, like a ton of games to prepare for.
Yeah. I mean, I'll sound probably biased when I say this because of the circumstances, but I feel like there should not be like a qualifier that gets you a seed for a second qualifier that you have to then make. I feel like there's very little weight on those results. And I mean, especially with EU, like it's all BO1s, which is an even more egregious format, I would say. But I just think that it's a super long, drawn out format. But then there's also a patch that happened in the middle of the qualifier. So it ends up being like, we played the first qualifier on the old patch, we played the closed on the old patch, and then it was like 3 days till the next close qualifier, and we're playing on the new patch now, and it's just kind of like a weird. It didn't make a lot of sense to me as a player. I mean, obviously you have to deal with it and adapt, and you know, the teams that are gonna adapt are gonna win in the end, right? So it's, you know, it's everyone's dealing with the same circumstances, but I just think that the way that they rolled out the patches and the way that they set up like the format of the tournament, I don't think was that good. Like, you think of it too, like you play way more matches going into the finals, and then the finals is a BO3 single elim bracket.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of like a very weird format. Like, I would much rather see, even if there was more teams in the actual finals, like maybe 16 teams, but then it's like a BO3 single elim. Like, I feel like 8 teams, you should be double elim, but it's like very, I don't know, it's like all the time was spent for the qualifiers and then very little time on the main event.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
I think it's also a particularly interesting point of feedback when you look forward to their plans for next year as well, which I'm sure we'll hit on at some point, and we'll kind of bring that back around. I wanted to touch on the final game that you had for a moment, because that one, I think, was the one that has got the most like fire from the community, because it was so different to what you were previously playing. The game against T1, I was expecting you guys to win that one. Even after watching you have the shaky performance against Space Station, I thought, okay, against T1 though, T1 play like quite a slow style. They've increased the pace a little bit when it comes to bind, but they have the same kind of maps that they like to play. If it goes towards split, you guys are feeling good. And instead, we were treated to Yeah, a very different look from you guys. Like again, running the Sova when it came to Ascent and falling short, and then Bind was this crazy triple duelist look with the Sova again that we hadn't seen at all from you guys. But it was like we hadn't seen it from you guys, but we'd seen it from a couple of other teams in the tournament so far. Like TSM were running a bit of triple duelist, FaZe were running a lot of it as well because they're FaZe, of course. And it had been moderately successful for those teams. What the hell's going on there?
I mean, I think that series was going to be hard for us. When we played really poorly in the first like the group stage, and we didn't get the high seed, and we knew that we were playing T1. We knew that they were going to just veto split, and Haven's just has not been good for us. Lately, it's been a map that we've kind of like strayed away from, and we put a lot more emphasis on like our split and our bind and making our Ascent strong. And yeah, I mean, the bind comp was something we had talked about playing. Obviously, we did not execute it properly at all. I think the biggest mistake, I mean, we didn't lose the game because of this by any means, but I think us choosing to start on defense with that composition was actually probably a big mistake. I think we should have actually played on attack first. I think we had a lot more opportunities to make the game closer. And like, even though the score was like what 13-8 on both maps, I felt like the games were a bit closer than the score line, but we did some pretty poor things on bind. And a lot of rounds in that series we're just doing like really uncharacteristic things. I don't know if it was like the pressure of the event, which would be strange because we have a pretty experienced team. But we were losing like 4v2s that we would never lose like in other matches, and we were really sloppy, just played pretty poorly. And I think T1's a really good team. I think people underestimate them a lot. So I wasn't like, obviously it's disappointing not to qualify, but I wasn't too distraught about losing to them because I think they're good. So it's like we just played really poorly in the second qualifier, and in the format like this, if you have a bad day, bad run of form, it's gonna haunt you. So
what was your experience with that composition? Is this something that you were intending to run kind of pre-patch, or something you'd scrimmed a lot of? It was like some hidden ace in the hole, or was this like we're kind of boomed, let's go for it?
We honestly we had never practiced that comp before. So it's pretty ballsy, I would say, to pull that out. I mean, obviously, it did not work, but we've done it before in the past. We've ran the triple sentinel comp against sentinels on split when we'd taken a map off of them, and pop flash is not a composition that we'd ran before in practice. We've actually had quite a few comps that we've played in tournaments where we haven't practiced them, but we have an idea of how we want to play. And I think a strength of our team is that we are pretty adaptable, and a lot of the strategies that we run are on the fly. A lot of things that I'm calling in the mid round, and just kind of like how I'm seeing the game. So even compositional changes like that, things that I'll take the credit and the blame for. I mean, Mitch, like, so basically what had happened in that game was we felt like we needed the Phoenix because of some of the things that we were having problems with in the earlier matches, like against Space Station, without having the Phoenix, because we were running Raze and Reyna, and then we did like Raze and Jett. And in our practice, we were running a lot of Phoenix Jett or Reyna Raze, and we felt like we kind of needed the Phoenix to do some of the tactics that we wanted to run. And then Mitch was not very comfortable playing Cypher, so we were like, okay, like go ahead and play the Phoenix. Like I trust you. We had like this idea of getting orb control and just getting a lot of orbs on Mitch and feeding him the orbs so we can get a lot of ults up. And then it's a very strange situation. Like, he also wanted to be able to op, so we were thinking maybe even putting him on the Jett. So we ultimately went with Phoenix, and then there's like 5 seconds left in the agent select, and we're like, all right, Tyson, you gonna play Jett? And he's like, I'm gonna play Reyna, or it's something like this. And he just like locked in, and we're just like, all right, like, let's go. So that was
But that to me also sounds like people will listen to that and think that's mad that these guys are figuring out what comp they want to run like 3 seconds before the game begins. But I assume that that's also a product of the fact that you guys believe you need to make adaptations because you feel like you were struggling, like you had lost to Renegades, then you'd lost to Space Station. It's like a compounded belief that what you were running isn't going to work, so you need something new.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, that's whether or not that's like the thing to do is obviously open to debate, but
Sure.
I mean, we've never felt like not confident in what we want to do. Like, it wasn't like we were like, shit, like we know we're gonna lose if we play our comp, like let's try something different. It was more like we felt like the idea that we took, because we talked about it quite a bit. It wasn't like we went into the game and then like
Sure. Yeah.
5 minutes before the game we're like, oh, let's just like play Phoenix or whatever. Like we had talked about it a couple days prior, because we were kind of feeling like we were gonna play T1 from the bracket, especially when Shot Up was out, right? So he was not playing with Immortals for the rest of the bracket. So we kind of knew we were going to play T1. So it was something that we had talked about. We didn't get a scrim, unfortunately, because of the time of like when our matches were. So we were unable to find a warm up. So it was probably like, instead of sticking to this plan that we had talked about, we probably should have just like went with our old comp, even though it wasn't working. But it's, you know, it was just, we felt confident, but we just didn't execute it properly. And again, like we played pretty poorly in this match, like overall, but I think a lot of our downfalls come to our individual mistakes that we make in these games that are uncharacteristic. Like I think we lose a lot of, like the pistol round on this game, we're in like a 4v2 and our comms just like collapse, which is like really not something that's like happens to our team that often. So I don't really know what was going on in these games, but it was just not, we're not playing like ourselves, and teams just play better than us, to be honest. It happens.
Yeah.
Sure. Definitely does.
It comes down to sometimes. I mean,
Yep.
this is where I bring up the elephant in the room. Is this where we talk about the rumors, the Cloud9 rumors? I mean, I think it's logical, isn't it? It's logical. You don't have to talk about it, Shinobi. I know we briefly mentioned it as well. There's not a lot you can talk about with this, but yeah, there are rumors of some team movements, and this is going to go one of two ways. It's either going to be a very nice, awkward segment sandwiched in the middle of the podcast, or it's going to be a fulfilling one. So take it away, lads.
Yeah, go on. Wyatt can address the rumors. I haven't actually been keeping up with it.
Well, what I had seen, basically, what had started this rumors, as is always the case with these roster rumors, is someone on Reddit is watching someone's stream, and on someone's stream it shows their friends list of people scrimming, and it was showing a Cloud9 scrim where they're playing with Profi instead of Unos and scrimming Immortals. So then that spurred the thought that Cloud9 are making roster changes, and that was a big upvoted post on Reddit yesterday. So it's kind of a, I guess, big pressing topic at the moment. If there's any, I don't know, take it away, Shinobi.
Or take it away, Shinobi.
Or just deny it all, confirm it all. It's up to you what you want to do.
Yeah, I can't talk about anything Cloud9 moving forward, but yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Do you think a lot of teams will make roster moves after First Strike, though? Do you think that the like upcoming announcements for 2021, teams that either didn't qualify or want to, like, is now the time, if you were to make moves, if anyone in the scene was to make moves, to kind of get the perfect roster for next year?
I think it largely depends on if teams are going to be willing to change players, like multiple teams. Like, I think if you're a team that didn't do well and you're like, we want to change and make a roster change, there's really not a lot of people to get that are like not a risk, right? Obviously, you know, if high risk, high reward, right? You get somebody who's unproven and they do really well, they're going to be like a superstar, like a diamond in the rough. But I think for a lot of the top teams to want to make changes, there'd have to be like destinations for these players to go to that's like makes sense, right? Like if orgs wanted to switch out players, but I don't think a lot of the teams will change people right now. But I mean, the thing too is like, even though it is a big tournament, right? It's a Riot event, it's First Strike. There's so many tournaments that are going on. Like I really think like looking at this one tournament like in a one-off is probably not it's not the end all be all. Obviously, you know, it's a big tournament, but there's been a lot of big tournaments and teams have failed and they haven't changed players. Like,
True.
I don't know at what point you draw the line. Like, this is like the catalyst. Like, we're gonna make a change here. The scene's still new and developing. I think once with like this series coming up now with Riot really stepping in and being like, hey, like here's like a big year-long plan that we're gonna run. I think you might see teams make changes more because they kind of know what's next, right? They kind of have like a timeline in mind. But going into that, I don't know if a lot of teams will make changes. We'll have to see kind of how all the teams perform in First Strike and how much value they place on the event itself. That's something to keep in mind.
I've got a tough question for you here, Shinobi, but I'm sure you've kind of heard some variation of it before from either the community or from people within it. Is a common criticism leveled at Cloud9 is that it's kind of insane that your team hasn't been able to win tournaments when you have TenZ on the roster. Like TenZ is such an insane player that you would expect any team that has him on that roster to be at least punching at your level where you're like, reasonably, even after going out of First Strike, you could still place you guys as like third best in NA, genuinely, over the past 3 months. But, it's been either, you've kind of been at third best at best across the entire period of time. What would you say to those criticisms? Do you think that's a fair criticism to level at your team?
To some extent, I would say. I think, I mean, it's no secret. Like when we play to our level, I think we're the best team in NA when we play to that peak, but we just don't reach it that often. We're very up and down. I think a problem that we have is we do play to the level of our opponents. So when we play better teams, I think we play consistently close games. And that I don't feel like we ever really get like blown out by any team. Like I don't feel like there's been a series where we just like get completely wrecked or we lose like 13-3 or something.
No, I don't think so. But, whereas actually you could say that about teams like Envy who do get actually wrecked by Sentinels. You tend to stay close with all of the top teams from my memory.
I would say like something obviously that the community can't know is like how inner workings of the team are. Like Tyson's obviously an insane player and like he's like definitely the best player that I've played with mechanically, and he's by far the best player I would say in Valorant at the moment, like just in terms of skill. But having the best players on a team doesn't make you the best. Like there's so many intangibles that people don't see that's like not in the server, not reflected in like scoreboard or any of these things. Like communication, like the reason why we lose a lot of the time comes down to our decision making and our communication. I would say it's sometimes it is definitely fragging. Like people definitely have off games, and I'll take a lot of that criticism where sometimes I'm just not playing that well individually, and that's definitely it's like a problem, and it's something that can be why you lose games. But I don't think that's like the number one reason that we lose matches. I would say it comes way more down to our decision making and how we play out the rounds. Like I think we get into a lot of good situations and we don't always close them. I'm thinking like in my head, I'm thinking about this match against TSM on Split, the epic almost comeback from them on the semifinals in the first qualifier, and we're in like an unlosable 2v1. Mitch uses the Killjoy ult. We push Hazed all the way back to CT spawn, and then we just like solo push into CT and give him a 1v1, and then we end up like losing the 2v1, and it's like we could win the game right there at 13-6, but then we make it like really difficult on ourselves, and we have to play 13-11 now, right? But I think any team that has TenZ would be a better team. I would say he's just that good mechanically, but I think for someone like TenZ to be like the best player, like period, like overall, not just mechanically, I think he needs to work on his intangibles. I think that's something that we've been working hard to get him to improve on. And the thing about TenZ too is like this guy has no ego at all. Like he's probably one of the most humble players I've played with. He takes criticism really well, and he's just like a general like nice guy. Like you have to like I don't know how someone could not like him or not respect his game. He's just like a really good person. I think maybe sometimes he should have the killer instinct and demand a bit more and have a bit of an ego, because I feel like some of the times you need that as like a star player. Like I know exactly what I need to do to win the game. Like I need you to do this for me so we can win.
Right.
Where I think he's like more of a passive person, where when he's really feeling it, he will be like that. But it's kind of like a coin flip as to whether or not he's going to be like super zoned in and being like really alpha. But But yeah, I mean,
it sounds weird though, but that is so true. I feel like that's more true in Valorant than it is in a game like CS as well. You really need to tell your teammates what you want them to do for you. It's much harder to. You can even tell this when you go and play ranked or something. If you want to set someone else up to do something, it's much easier when they tell you what they want you to do in order for them to succeed. And Valorant is so much of a game, I feel, where individual players need to be calling their own plays a lot rather than one big IGL.
Yeah, I mean, communication goes both ways, but I think the thing with this game is like in CS, obviously, like a lot of the players that are at the top are CS players, but like in CS, it's like everybody has the same kit. So if you need something to be done, it's like anybody can do it pretty much, right? If you're in the position. But in this game, it's like there's so much more. Like, okay, if they do like this kind of execute and they have these ults, like what are the best agents to deal with this hit? And you have to be really thinking. Like, obviously, you can just like hit your shots and win the round, but because it's an attack shooter. But you know, a big part of that comes down to having plans and knowing kind of how you want to use your abilities with each other, because the abilities are OP in this game. Like you can win rounds just off of good utility, like straight up. Like you have a breach ult and you get a good timing, you hit a 4-man ult, like you just win the round, and you don't really have. There's no like gunplay involved in really winning that kind of round. So it's like that's something that's unlike CS, like where every person has flashes. Like, hey, I need you to flash the spot for me. Can you do it? Yeah, no problem. Like this game, it's way more like making the best of the situation that you have based on like where people are, right? You can't always have the luxury of getting a smoke down, getting a flash for a teammate, mauling out of position. Like you really need to be adaptable, I'd say, in that regard, which I think also part of why you see a lot of teams in the meta now are just like doing a lot of 5-man executes and just running it down is because the abilities are so strong. And it's pretty hard to default efficiently in this game a lot of the time because of like how spread you have to be with some of the map design, and with them changing like sentinels, it is kind of like right now I feel like the meta with Skye too, it's like it's gonna move to a faster paced kind of game for now until they change some of these things. I personally don't like the direction of the game in that regard. I think it's like too narrow with like the win conditions of like how you can play right now. But again, it's just you have to adapt and make the best of the situations. So
let's talk about Skye for a little bit then. That's one of the things coming up. Like in terms of viability as an agent, like do you think this is going to be almost like a must pick for a lot of teams? Because she seems her kit, she's got a lot in it, right? I mean, she's got everything you could really want out of an agent, but it's almost like the jack of all trades, master of none, where she can flash, but they can be killed. And you kind of, you can't really push off your own utility in a lot of ways. She definitely seems like something that in order to maximize your impact by playing her, you need a team that's going to be coordinated alongside you. So what have you noticed, at least from playing in scrims? Is she getting up there in terms of being like a must pick?
So we actually haven't, because of the qualifier, like second qualifier, we really didn't play a lot of Skye. We played against a couple teams that were in the like they already qualified for the finals, and most of the time they didn't play Skye out of honestly just to help us out, because it was hard because there's not a lot of teams for them to practice against, so maybe they didn't want to show everything. But I will say we played against Renegades on Haven, and they were running Skye and Sova, and I've never been more malding in my life. And shit was so annoying to play against, man. Like you're just playing in garage, I'm getting wolfed, I'm getting droned, I'm getting flashed, I'm getting like just Demogorgon from the ult. Like they're just everything is being thrown. Like, it's I don't know, she's pretty annoying, I would say. And I think like the thing that's the most broken about her, I'd say, is the fact that she tells you when someone is blind. So like you don't even have to really like know someone's there and flash them. You can use the flashes just like for information purely, right? Like I think someone might be in this spot, like let me just throw this hawk out and just pop it, and then she tells you that someone's there. It's like at a high level, that's pretty broken, I would say, because good players are going to run with that information, right? They're not going to just like it means a lot more in like a pro setting than it would be in like a ranked game or a pub. But I think she's really versatile, so I think there's a lot that you can do with her. I actually don't know how accurate this is, but I had played in the playtest that they had done with Icebox and Skye, like the closed, like the pro player little thing that they did. I felt like she was pretty garbage when I played her in the playtest, but like I swear her flash is much faster. The blinding thing was not in the game, like in the playtest. So they added a bunch of stuff to her kit to make her stronger that like was not in the playtest, and there was
So
no
it's
mention
the
of it.
pros'
So.
fault. The pros tested her
Yeah,
and
it said-
said,
it said-
"Oh no, she's not that good," and so they were like, "Buffer
Yeah.
all the way."
I mean, I could be completely wrong about that. Like, it could just be like placebo or just me not remembering. But like, I feel like she was not nearly as good as she is right now. Especially also with the overall flash change with like the time that like the fade timer is like a lot longer now, right? Where you stay blind, and then like her flash duration is also just like insane. Like
It is
just,
very long.
and you get a free flash every. I don't know. It's kind of. I'm glad I'm not having to play Icebox in this event with Skye. I'll say that. But
Yeah. I've been watching a lot of the tier 2 teams, but well, I say a lot of them. I've been watching 3 or 4 tier 2 teams play Icebox in North America because they played it in the NSG tournament that happened just this weekend. And the range of compositions that people are playing is enormous. It's much bigger than any map. Even when those maps were first released, like even when, I don't know, Split was first released or Ascent was first released, there wasn't such a range of compositions being used. It feels like Icebox, people are, especially with the Sentinel changes, so that now you don't necessarily have to watch the flanks for Sentinels. It seems like people are down to run anything. And Skye is one of the agents that people were trying to get value out of, and the amount of space that you can make over on the A site and information that you can gather by hopping the birds over the walls is really large. It's very interesting to see the value that people get out of her long term.
I think people are gonna play Skye. Like some of the, like for instance that Renegade scrim, like some of the things you can do, like you can be long C on Haven and you can flash over the building and blind all of the site, like from the bottom of long. And like you can do that on Bind, you can do that on Ascent. Like a lot of these maps that have these high roofs, like you can just throw the bird over the building and just blind the entire site. And it's pretty broken, I would say. Because like even though you can shoot the bird obviously and break the flash, like really easy to break the flash, like people I think are gonna, it's like a skill ceiling agent. Like the more you understand like how to use her kit, like people are gonna find really good flashes and ways to use her, and it's gonna be really hard to deal with.
You can also put the bird in the fucking sky, where it's kind of difficult to like flick upwards and destroy a bird that's flying at like an AC 130 above you.
Especially if teams want to also play like Raze and Sova. There's just so much like shit that's being thrown at you at the same time that you have to like break and deal with. It's like that's like what makes her. It's not just her. It's like the combination of agents that you can play together that makes it like really difficult to deal with, I would say. Inherently, she's obviously good, but Then for Icebox, I have no idea what the go-to comp would be on that map. You can make an argument for a lot of different agents. I would say I think Viper is actually quite strong on that map, just because of the way that the map architecture and the design. Like it's not that easy to get like good omen smokes on a site to like really block angles, but with Viper you can really like isolate at least a good portion. Like on the A side, you can cut the site in half, and at least gives you like opportunity to push in.
It seems like a lot of teams are trying to use Viper.
Right? Of Icebox as a map is the kind of design of it is really hard to clear out areas, right? So it makes sense that Viper would be good, just the ability to kind of like separate a site out and kind of just I guess take it one step at a time with the wall, things like that. I mean I like Icebox, but that's only because no one knows how to play on it at the moment. In ranked. It is just free games. But I can 100% empathize with a lot of the pros who don't like it because it is so different to any other map that has been released in like just think in tactical shooter history. It's well maybe not history, but there's so much high ground. There's so many weird like angles on certain spots. It is a very, very different map. And I mean, Josh, we were talking about this the other night. You were saying you were watching some of the Icebox games and you were like, it's just chaos. And I'm like, well, is that not just because it's a new map? But you said that you think it's like, it's not just the fact that it's a new map that it's chaos. It's like the map design itself.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both, to be honest, because when you see the other maps being released, it's pretty obvious like which areas of the map you need to take control of, how you're going to take control of them. There's a bit of a a decent idea, like right from the off, of how to play the map, and then it's about refining it and about like strategy either way. And this map is much more of because there are so many different areas to clear, and the A site has a billion different angles, but the B site, if you go towards that, is incredibly cramped to go through green. So you have to use utility to try and get through green if you want to play there. But then you also need to clear out A aggressively at the beginning. Like the map when you're attacking seems to you have to run like a very basic default or just burst immediately. Yep. And if you run a default, you're just so split across the map, and you're so at a disadvantage in every angle that you check that the attackers are, I think, will find it really difficult, unless your players are just a lot better than other players, to be able to actually find like a foothold. Like, I feel like teams will just end up bursting into these sites because defaulting is just so fucking hard.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing too with the map is like there's a mid, but it's not really like a traditional mid at all, because it doesn't actually, like in most maps, if you think about how they would be played, at least like in CS, and then I mean you could say like Bind's probably the one exception, because the mid is like the teleporters, right? Like using the teleporters is kind of like how you get access to like quick avenues between the sites. But this map, it's like if you go toward B or you took mid control, it's not like easy to just go A or B off of taking mid. Like the mid is like this, whatever this is, this kitchen area, and like the bottom, it's not very, I don't know, I feel like they have to do something about the mid portion of this map, because I feel like it just feels like super out of place with like what the rest of the map is trying to do.
It's just a lurk avenue. It's not, you can't, you don't take control of mid ever, because there's a ramp at one end of it as well. So like what, you have to dominate their entire spawn in order to control mid? That doesn't make sense. So you can only really, I mean, some of the best rounds that I've seen so far from the tier 2 teams are where they put a lot of pressure on one site to force rotations, and then they manage to get a lurk through mid, someone through tube or someone through mid. You know, normally they'll start off by breaking like the killjoy utility at the beginning of the round, and then they'll put a lot of pressure on one side of the map, lurk somebody in behind, and get big value out of the lurk. Where I could see that being interesting, you know, somewhat similar to, I don't know, like a little bit about how nuke works, where you're trying to put pressure on different areas of the map in order to get someone into a hidden position. I could see that being a somewhat interesting idea. But just the fact that that lurker then has to check 72,000 angles as they roam around the map, and they're just doing figure eights with their crosshair as they look up and down and left and right, is it's so difficult. It's such a weird map.
Yeah, I think like if you look at like map, like I think Ascent is probably the best map in the game at the moment, and I feel like the reason, my reasoning for that is, at least like it feels like a map that the win condition is like not just one play style. Like, I mean, granted, this could be because people haven't figured out how to play Icebox. Like there could be some like crazy, you know, really intelligent way of like working the rotations through middle and splitting the map that like people haven't done yet. You know, because the map is still new, and like, you know, we'll see what happens. But Ascent is like, you can rush on that map. You can split mid. Like you can like slow the game down. You could do like crazy splits through like dirt into heaven. Like there's all these different like things you can do. You can fake sites. Like it's a map that, to me, like the design of it makes a lot of sense, and it caters to multiple different play styles. Like you can be aggressive on CT side, and there's like obvious options of things that you can do, right? Like there, you can play defensive. You can use the doors. Like there's all these like little nuances of things that you can do. Where like on Icebox, I don't see like the same gameplay, like the possibilities to like these other maps like Ascent. Even like Bind is a weird map, but I actually think like the more I've played the map, it's like the play style is like you don't want to just like get caught in transition between A and B. You really need to like think about the map in terms of dominating the teleporters, in my opinion. Which,
yeah, you guys have some really interesting reads on Bind. It really is only you guys that play with the teleporters that much. And I like it. I think it makes a lot of sense to do like sand crunches based on hookah timing.
What I would also say is like, I'd probably say a big reason why we actually were worse in the second qualifier is we kind of strayed away from using the teleporter as much. Like if you watched our rotations in the Space Station game and in the T1 game, we were way more like rotating through spawn and not doing this like overstacking one site, and then when they hit the weak site, we just hit the TP and we're just like crunching them, right? Like that was something that we did a lot against Envy in the finals and against TSM as well, and it was a lot more successful than the way we were playing in these other games. And yeah, I think that's like a unique design of this map, but I think the more I've played it, it's like it makes sense. Like I think it's a pretty decently designed and well thought out map. Which at first I hated Bind. I thought this map was terrible, and I did not like it at all. But it's grown on me as a map.
Yeah, you don't think that'll be the case of Icebox though, just in general? I
No.
mean, what you're saying with Bind is like,
So it's just not good. Icebox gets the not good seal from Shinobi.
I think I think it's a little bit better than what I think. Because when I first played it, I thought it was the worst map ever, like designed in gaming, just period. I thought this map was just the worst map you could possibly make. Like it was just like it felt like a Halo map being forced into like like CS. Like it was very strange to me the way that was designed. But like I've played it a bit and I still don't think it's good, but I think it's definitely fun to mess around on and play like in ranked and in pubs and things like this. Like I think it's just a fun map to aim map on, but I don't.
You
don't really
think
know.
with enough time though, like this, you could see like an evolution of the way that the map is played.
Yeah, I think for sure. I think I also think it'd be unrealistic to think that this map does not get changed in any way,
Sure,
like in terms of its layout. I feel like Riot will do something to the map at some point and make some changes to it. Like I don't think that the Icebox we have now is the Icebox we'll have in 6 months. But yeah, I think there'll definitely be evolutions. I think teams will start to figure it out and play. I mean, if you look at Ascent, like people had no idea how to play that map when it first came out. People were like not sure how to use the doors and like what the best way to approach. And then you saw this like Odin spamming meta come out where people were just like fucking playing B with the Odin and just like dominating B main, and then people figured out how to play around it, and then you saw a lot less of that Odin at B now. Like, 'cause people are way better about knowing how to like not just run in and get spammed by a Sova dart and just get mowed down. Like, I think you'll see a lot of these meta shifts on Icebox. I just don't know how far we'll go. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I think just listening to you guys talk about it, it seems like the biggest issues with it is that the map design itself strays so far from like I guess how the game fundamentally plays.
Yeah.
Where you can have so many different looks on the rest of the maps, but Icebox is so radical that you kind of it forces your hand almost in terms of how you're supposed to play on the map to kind of get through a lot of the narrow choke points or to try and open up the map itself. So it's that's kind of one of the main limiting factors. I don't really know how they fix that without overhauling the map a lot.
I mean,
I think that's actually kind of inevitable, though. Yeah. I agree with the 6 months we won't be seeing the same Icebox. I think that's probably true.
I mean, it's hard to really know. Like, this could be wrong when I say this, but until we see more maps from Riot and what they want to do, like it could be a map design where like they want to have specific playstyles on different maps. Like, 'cause the only map that they really added into the game since then was Ascent, which is more like a traditional tac shooter, like a CS style map, and then Icebox like something completely different. If you look at like the gimmicks on all the maps, right? Because they want to have like different like quirks on every map. Like it could just be that there's some maps in the pool that like I don't think that they should do this, but I could see an argument where like they want to have like these are the play styles, and that means you have to be good at playing a lot of different ways on all the maps, right? Like you could argue that that is like to be the best team, you have to have a varying play style. Like you can't just be like a slow team, you can't just be like a rush team. Like you have to really have like a multitude of ways to play the maps, but no one will know if that's really the direction they want to go until we see the like more maps that they want to add into the game. Because you know the next map they add could just be Ascent 2.0, right?
Yeah, I could see a world in which Icebox becomes a decent map. I think the idea that you can play some. So this is actually a pretty interesting round by the attacking side of Equinox here. They run double Cypher trips over at green, and so they it's the only map that I can think of where you have to allocate both of your tripwires to one extremity in order to lock it off. But that's what they've gone with instead of running the Killjoy that most other people do, or triple duelist, and they just pressure towards mid and A, and then they'll return to B later on in the round. And it's relatively successful for them. And I think that some kind of slow default like that, where you're trying to work lurkers in, and then a really fast push onto A that a lot of teams have, which is pretty exciting. And then also, though, the reason that I think it could be a somewhat interesting map is that I think defensive aggression is almost necessary. Like the more that teams play this map, I think the more that they'll be pushing down mid and pushing A. And you can't really do that with your full team because the map's too big, but you can do that with like 1 or 2 people. And that's an interesting dynamic. I don't think we really have another map where the defenders are almost forced to push up if they're given the space. And that, I don't know. I could see a world in which that's interesting, at least to watch, even if it isn't to play. Very much more of like a 1v1 duel kind of map because your players are pushed up into what would normally be overextended positions, but you're really relying on like your individual aim to carry you through, or you've got these really slow rounds where you're trying to get lurkers in. It could be interesting.
Could be. Yeah. Let's move the conversation along. Let's go to the final question in our new segment, which is quick questions with Shinobi, which is we talk about it pretty much every week now. It feels like we talk about EU versus NA in terms of the regions, and not like directly comparing them, but I guess directly comparing them because we're trying to see what region is the better region and what better person to ask than someone who plays in a North American region. So, I mean, what is your take on this? Because I don't know, there's a lot of pros that don't watch as many games. I don't know about your, how many of the, I mean, it's probably a bad question to ask, actually, because a lot of the EU games weren't even broadcasted. But what's your take on this, then? The whole EU versus NA aspect. Which region currently seems like they've got a good grasp of the game? Is it always in flux? Is it always one region in control? What's going on?
It's really hard to say. Like, I think this might sound like a cliche, or stupid, but like the top teams in Europe, I think, are by far stronger than like the teams in NA, or like at least they're very close. But I think in NA, like the lower you go down, there's like more competitive teams, I'd say, in NA. Like I'd say like the 9th through like the 12th best team in NA can beat the 2nd or 3rd best team in NA on a good day, where I feel like in Europe it's not. I mean, obviously there were upsets in the BO1s, but like I don't see G2 or Liquid losing a BO3 to like some 10th best EU team. And just getting like just knocked out. Where like I think in NA, I think there's a lot of dark horse teams that can win, and whether or not that's because the region is better or it's hard to really to gauge that.
I've got a personal theory on why that is actually, and why we sometimes see that, and it's that North America has more money. So you end up with more teams signed.
Illusion,
more teams signed. So in EU, you end up with more kind of like flux of players, so that the kind of good players almost kind of congregate at the top level of EU, even on unsigned teams, and like they're more willing to mix and match. Whereas NA, you've got the contracts, like you've got set teams a lot of the times that maybe they're not going to be performing from like 1 to 10 or something. So you can take more games against each other. I don't know. Yeah, that's my personal theory when I look at the outside in from these regions. What do you guys think? What do you think? Why?
I mean, there's definitely some truth to that. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of truth to that, honestly. I mean, it's just it's funny seeing like, and they do deserve it because they're a good team and they're a very interesting team as well, but like Moon Raccoons, the community just rallying behind them to get them signed. The one good not signed NA team. Meanwhile, EU just fucking playing for scraps. Yeah. Just trying to put some food on the table. It's just tragic, honestly. And no one pays attention to these poor European players. But yeah, I do think there's a lot of I think there's a lot of truth in what you were just saying, Bren. But I think the main difference, I think we kind of touched on it last week, so I don't want to stay on it too long with my take, but I do think that the EU utility usage is just a bit deeper right now than in NA in a kind of general sense, but I think scaling down when you look at the lower teams, once you get down to like the 5th through 20th, I think they have a better grasp in EU of the utility of the game than a lot of the NA teams of that similar kind of caliber.
Yeah, we kind of touched on this a lot. What were you going to say, Josh?
I was just going to ask Shinobi a question about this kind of aspect as well, because I feel like a lot of the other regions have learned different things when they when you're presented with a brand new game, you know, if we think like 3 years down the line from now, what Valorant will look like, it's gonna be a much more refined product when people actually play the game. I don't mean that the game itself is going to be more refined. I mean that people's play is going to be more refined. And I think some component of that is going to be like the utility usage, but then also you've got the team play and the coordination and how people actually play off each other. And then you've got like how aggressive you are and how many different looks you have and the strategies. There's a whole different variation of things that you could focus on at the beginning of the game. You could try and get a really elaborate strat book like Vision Strikers. You could try and play for very heavy utility-based defaulting like the European teams do on their attacking rounds. You could try and play a more flash-based style that's to do with getting really good syncing up between your teammates, which I think a lot of the NA teams have done. What do you think that? What do you think is the best way of playing Valorant at the moment, or like what avenue do you think you should be focusing on right now? And do you think there's any team that is doing that particularly well, where they're almost like pushing ahead of the other teams because they're going in the right direction?
Honestly, not. I don't know. I can't think of a team in NA that's really like setting the meta. I think everyone's trying to figure out still like what the best way of playing Valorant is. I think a lot of the teams kind of copy each other, like in how they play. Like most of the teams run the same comps. Like you don't see a lot of. I'd say like we were one of the teams that was, and TSM as well. I think are teams that are they're like a trendsetter kind of team. Like they'll shift away from the meta and play things that a lot of teams aren't playing. There's no way to really know what the best way of playing is. I think T1 have done a pretty good job at setting up like a good game plan for playing Valorant. Like I think I'm really high on T1. I think they're a really good team. I think people like shit on them a lot, but yeah, I think the more time that they have, they're going to be a team that gets better with time.
Yeah, I mean, they seem to be getting way better as time goes on as a team. Sure. Like I remember every week we would record an episode, and there was a distinct turning point in one episode to the next where we literally went from T1 are fucking clueless, like they're like just absolutely ripping into them for just playing like just ancient pre-BC level of tactical shooters, like the way that they were playing inherently, but the radical improvements they made from one week to the next was super apparent, and they seem to just keep getting better and better. So I definitely agree with you on that aspect.
I actually do have one. Sorry, this is a bonus question in the rapid fire Shinobi question round.
It's not really rapid fire.
You can no, not at all. Actually, very slow shots. I have. So my question is, you can answer this short, long. Is Reyna good?
No.
Okay. There we have it, folks.
Okay. Well, there you go.
So, okay, which is funny because we play it, but like Reyna's an agent that in the hands of someone that's really good, she's good. But you could say that about any agent, right? Like if someone's insane and they play an agent, they're going to be good on the agent. So it's like, I think Reyna's kit is like, it's pretty bad. But like the playmaking that you can do on her, like on like a 10s or something, like if this guy has the ults up and he's in a 1v3, like he's going to win the round just because the ult is broken in the hands of a good player. But if you're just like some noob playing Reyna, like you're just going to feed probably. Like it's not that good. Like the flashes are not that good. I think the info that you can get with Reyna is insane, but it's like for Reyna to be like an elite agent that people would always want to play, if the orbs were like, if they're just there and you can grab them, she would just be like the most broken best agent. But
wait, sorry, what do you mean by that?
So like if you like did damage to somebody but you didn't get the killing blow on them and you were still able to grab the orb and use like the dismiss, she would just be like absurd, because then the info that you like, the untradeable aspects, like she's good but she requires kills. So like I can't say that she's like a good agent because her kit only works if you're getting frags, right? But it's in the hands of someone that can get kills consistently, she's good. But
like, we've seen a lot of American teams try and make much more use out of the Reyna, and they hello,
hi,
that was weird. Our faces just became Wyatt there for a moment.
I don't know what happened there, to be honest.
But that threw me off. What was I going to say? Oh, a lot of the teams have been using Reyna recently, and I feel like they haven't just been using it as a solo carry agent. They've been trying to push a little bit, try and get a bit of info off of their flashes, trying to push into like advanced one and done positions where they can then escape to be able to get like early info for their team. Do you think that this style of play is sustainable? Do you think that it is something that can work, or do you think it's just an obsession with Reyna because she works well for good fraggers and they've eventually found a way of making it work? Like what direction does this go in?
The thing with like Reyna is like outside of her flash, I mean, like again, it's all that you need kills, so it's like it's hard to really say that it's sustainable. Like I think a lot of duelists in NA, like from what I watched, like Wardell's an example that's not this kind of player, but there's a lot of players in NA that they play duelists and they're just like super greedy. Like they only use their abilities for themselves. Like I see Wardell a lot of the time, he's like using his cloud burst and Skadoodle again. Like these players, like they use their abilities to like help their team a lot more, and like they're really aware of like their situation, right? They're not just like, I only have my cloud burst for myself, or like I'm just gonna dash like the moment I get pressured. Like where like Reyna is like you don't have anything really besides the Leer is good, but you don't have a lot of things that can help your teammate. Where like Phoenix can wall and like help his teammate get out of a position, right? You can use like cloud burst to help your teammates. I mean, Raze doesn't really have anything like that, but Raze's kit is just broken because of like the amount of damage that you can get off with Raze and clearing and getting info and things like that. Where Reyna's just kind of like, she's good, but she's as good as the player that's using them. Where like if you're having a bad game on Jett, I still feel like you can impact the game really well. Like you can just literally dash and make space for your teammate and be difficult to kill, right? Like if you have good movement and you have good use with the abilities, it's like you can still get a lot done. Same thing with Phoenix, like getting orbs on Phoenix and you just running in, like even if you're 2 and 10, like you can still help the team in a lot of ways. Where with Reyna, really, it's just the Leers that you can do. If you don't get the kills, you can't help your teammates. But
do you think Reyna's seeing more playtime than she deserves to be played?
I think there's a lot of players that play Reyna that shouldn't be playing Reyna, in my opinion. But I think that they would get more value out of playing other agents. But the thing is, there's no perfect comp in this game. So like if a team, like I have my own like philosophies on like what makes comps good, and like everyone else is gonna have their own like reasoning to want to play certain agents. But like I think if someone's not comfortable playing an agent, they should never play it. Like if they're really comfortable on Reyna, then like it's always gonna be better, right? But I think if there was like an equal comfortability between like Reyna and like another agent, like another duelist, then they should go for it. But I like a lot of the like the breach. I'm a big breach stan. I like breach and like all these like really like utility based agents a lot more, which is ironic because we don't really play these agents all the time. But if it was a perfect world, I would love having breach on every map.
Yeah,
I just think he's insane. And I think you get way more value in a team setting out of like some of these agents compared to like these duelists, because not because that they're incapable, but I think a lot of players don't use the utility in a like a maximized way. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. Let's talk esports, because they made some big announcements for 2021. They've announced kind of like the circuit, I guess, the format. I don't know. For what it is, and the kind of feeding into the eventual what are they calling it? Challenges?
Champions.
Champions Tour. Yeah.
Which
the way it
is
all
a
works.
name that, I mean, this name though, the Champions Tour, and like the final event that is called Champions. Call of Duty's had champs for years. Like years and years and years. Call of Duty's finals, they call it champs, which I'm sure is exactly what they're going to shorten it down to in this game as well. Like no one's going to say, oh, are you heading to champions? They're going to say, are you heading to champs? So it's just going to feel like the exact same thing. I don't know. I found it really interesting that they're using all the same words that are used across other esports as well. Like they got challengers and masters in League of Legends, but flipped the other way around. Like in League, isn't it that masters feeds into challengers? And now they've flipped it around so the challenger feeds into masters in this game. I don't know. I think the terminology is mega confusing.
I mean, these are the guys that said the highest rank in their game was Valorant. So
yeah.
so, like, what can you do?
Do we have
It's
the
cool,
the
though.
pyramid scheme thing? The thing. You know what I'm talking about? The poster.
Yeah,
mate.
It's just called a pyramid. If there's no scheme, then
Well,
it's not a
okay,
pyramid
but
scheme.
it's not a pyramid scheme, but it reminds me of a pyramid scheme. This is more information than I can process at this time in the morning. Fucking hell, what is this?
This is okay. So let me guide you through it then. This is the challenges. So actually, the first thing to bring up, Kurt, if you don't mind, is the timeline, because the timeline is
The pyramid. Bring up the pyramid.
No, that's not the pyramid. Because you'll see how many happen across 1 year. Because there's a challenger that feeds into a masters, and then the challenges are these open brackets. So you think of it like first strike.
There you go.
So there's like this open qualifier in February that feeds into the closed masters event in March. And then there's another one in April, May that feeds into the one in June, another one in July, August that feeds into the one in September. And then I think only some regions have this like October last chance qualifier. And it's a point system the entire way through. So it's not like if you win masters in March, you're automatically into the final in December. Some regions have that, but overall, you're just trying to accrue points over the course of a year. So it's a proper full circuit thing. It's a really cool idea. I love this format.
Do this in Dota. Or at least
Yeah.
they did. They used to. I don't know if they still do because I don't follow Dota that closely. But you ran into scenarios where there would be a team that was dominant for the first half of the year, and they would accrue enough points to qualify, and then they would drop off the face of the earth for the second half, and they would just be kind of like stealing that, or not stealing, but they would be holding up that slot, and the level of competition would just shift around, and they wouldn't be as strong. It's I still think it's a pretty cool system though. For like if you were going to have one event at the end of the year, like this is a good way of doing it, I suppose, because you are rewarding, I guess, the consistency of being the best team. Well, I mean, I'm very curious to what you think about this kind of format as well, Shinobi, going into it as a pro player.
I think it's decent. Like one of the problems that like you just mentioned, like in CS, there was like with the major format, there was a lot of times where a team would like they would qualify, like they get 16th or whatever, and then they would qualify and they'd have a spot in the coming major, but then like that team just like fell off a cliff, so they're just like a wasted spot because the time between the last major and the following one was like 7-8 months. So it's like, and that's a long time in esports, right? But I think there's no real, I don't think there's like a better way that you can run the format unless you wanted to do like just one, like have them be separated, right? But if you want to have like a circuit, it's probably the ideal way of doing it, where you have a points-based system, because I don't think there's like a logical way that you could do it where like any other way, right? There's gonna inevitably be teams that were good and accrued points at one point, and then maybe they fell off a bit and they're still there, but there's no like, I don't know if there's a better way to alleviate that potential problem. But
they're basically using, if you look at what it says here, the Challenger Finals, it's basically the first strike format. So it's like some big open qualifier. You go through to the closed qualifier, top 4 progress and dodge the next open qualifier, and then you're through.
One,
so it's all looking very familiar, Shinobi.
But I think the difference is it's spread out, right? Is it not?
Yes, it is. It's like one every month, right?
I think the overarching setup is good, but I would prefer one open qualifier into like a big close qualifier into like a qualifying stage where it's like not that it's like long-winded, like qualify, get seeding, go into another qualifier, then go into another, like it's, I don't know, I'd rather just be like you play through the first one, because there's going to be more than one for this, right? So it's like even if you like got seeding in the first qualifier and you messed up and you didn't qualify, there's still going to be like more opportunities to get through, right, to the Masters. So
now it's implied as well that the ending, it's going to be international, right?
Yes. They also said that in theory these Masters events are supposed to be international as well. It's just that the issue is that they're going to be running while COVID is on. And so these first Masters events, like 1 and probably 2, are not going to be international, or rather interregional is probably how we should say it, because there are, like, Europe is always international. But the Valorant Masters 3, I think probably their intention is to run it as an interregional LAN event. And then Champions is just like the best of the best for the entire year, the most prestige. It's like the one that they're going to hype up like Worlds, and just have a huge show for.
Yeah, that is.
I think it's sick though. Like look at how these circuit points work and stuff. It's so good. I understand the idea of a team just dropping off and not really being there, but the Masters 3 winner. Look, this is like how they can. Look, the only way that the qualification works is if Masters 3 is actually an interregional LAN event, because then the overall winner of that gets to book their place into the Valorant Champions, assuming you know. And then if they were an NA team, that means that the next team down in NA actually gets the spot. So it's almost like by winning the third Masters, you're like guaranteeing your region an extra spot in Champions as well, which is an awesome, cool side effect of that as well. So like if a Korean team won it, it'd be like, oh, holy shit, they've booked their way in and they've allowed up more space for other Korean teams to join in Champions too. I don't know. I think that's really sick the way that it works. And you've got these slots coming in via circuit points over the course of the year, which I actually think it's almost necessary for a game like this, because you can have a patch where you're not that great. And so if you get a bit unfortunate at the beginning of the year, but heat up towards the end, you always want those teams to be able to still qualify. Sure, and likewise, like if you did really well in Masters 1 and then you dropped off in Masters 2 and 3, you might still be good for Champions. I think that this game is going to be have a bit more of a cycle to it than something like I don't think it's going to be as extreme as Dota, where you are, massively varied based on the patch itself. But I don't think it's going to be as static as CS, where if you've fallen off, you've fallen off, and you need to make roster changes.
Lengthy team eras. Yeah, I
don't think you're going to have like a whole year of an era.
Yeah, I don't think that's likely either. I like this system a lot. I think it's great, and I like to. I think it's nice to have a system like this for a full year early on in the game's lifespan as well. Like I think it's presented in a way that should be fairly easy for casual fans to follow throughout the entirety of the year, which is very important right now as well. But yeah, I mean, I'm more than anything excited for the international competition. I think that's like really going to be the moment for Valorant esports. If there's going to be one, that's going to be the pop-off moment.
It's so unfortunate that it's like still so far down the line. When was the Valorant Masters 3 scheduled for, which is the first one that they're even thinking about being interregional? I think it was like September.
Yeah,
something like that.
Later portion of the year. I mean, that makes it makes sense, but yeah, it's unfortunate, isn't it?
Yeah, it is unfortunate, but I mean, I'm just going to be salivating until then, because that is just going to be a ridiculous tournament, isn't it? Especially when you've seen all of the regions play in March and in June, and then it comes to September, and you've got this like clash of the regions, and even if that doesn't happen, like then in December, I mean, it's just going to be nuts. I think it's going to level up the scene so much.
It's probably going to solve one of the major issues as well, which is that people don't know where to watch the games. Like they don't know how to follow the games. They don't know what's important, like with the tournaments and other aspects. Like giving this kind of timeline early it's good for the casual, I think, user base, because there's a lot of casual players that play Valorant and they don't watch the esports like a lot of games. But getting that kind of conversion over is very important, and having this kind of consistency. I mean, it's one of the primary reasons that the Overwatch League is as successful as it is because they made it very easy to follow. Very easy.
You just go to one website every day.
Exactly.
I also think though that this is really good for pros too, because your whole 2021 is mapped out right now. Like, okay, there might be, and this is a topic I want to get onto, there might be other third-party tournaments sprinkled in here or there, but unless you really want to play them for the cash, they're not going to give circuit points. So you already know for the whole of 2021 which weeks of the year you are going to be playing in if you want to play the minimum required to participate in the circuit. That's great. That's fantastic scheduling. Pros can't normally schedule weeks ahead because they don't know what's going to happen coming up.
That is really good.
Yeah, so I think that's fantastic. I think it's also good for like broadcasters as well to be like, how many days of work a year can I actually get here? That kind of stuff is all it's all great.
I don't think this is a product of them learning from something that happened prior. I think that they were gonna do this like roadmap outline thing anyways, but like for like the events that were like going on in August, like the Ignition series, like we were told as a team, like, okay, like it'll be like one Ignition series a month, and then it was like we had 3 within like 3 weeks, and they were kind of like last minute, they're like, oh yeah, like by the way, this is like an Ignition event that you have to play in, and it actually, we had scheduled vacation in August that we had to like change because of the time. So it is really nice to see this like format where you know exactly when these tournaments are gonna go. I'm sure there's gonna be some wiggle room or like movement, like you who knows, like some of the dates could get changed, we don't know, but I think it's pretty set, and I think that's really good for the teams.
I have a little question though that I think that Riot, I would love for Riot to apply more transparency to, is are they going to still be giving out tournament licenses to other people at the same time during the year that their circuit is running? It seems like a small question, but it's so massive for the scene overall.
Yeah.
Most of the time, organizers like Riot and Blizzard lock things down during their time of the year. But the problem is that 2021 schedule, the whole of the year is their time of the year. Like what? January is the only time where you could run some big event and it would have all eyes on it. So my big question is, are Riot just going to totally lock things down to, I think it's under $10,000 tournaments. You don't have to apply for a license, or it's like a community license, something like that. So is that the only thing that we're going to have outside of Riot events? Because if so, that's kind of shite. Because that means if you go out in one of the early qualifiers, you just have to sit around as a team for a full month. Like you miss out on the Masters, you watch the other teams play, you've got nothing to play for until the next qualifier, which might be on a different patch with a fucking new agent, new map. Like what's even the point in scrimming at that point in time? So I think that Riot still has a large opportunity to really fuck this up, I think, if they don't, if they're too limiting with the tournament licenses that they give out. If they do the classic developer thing of saying, no, it's all of the spotlight on us, it's just Riot run tournaments for the rest of the year, I think that's going to be a huge problem for the scene. If you've got to allow the sprinklings of other formats for starters, like have some variety in the format by allowing TOs to run some different stuff. I just really hope they do that kind of aspect to it, because otherwise, can you imagine being in Cloud9 and like right now you get eliminated from First Strike, which we'll imagine is like Masters 1, and you just have to sit around for like a month and you're just twiddling your thumbs knowing that the next time you can compete is in an open bracket in like June. That would suck.
Yeah, that is an interesting situation as well, because it seems like with that $10,000 rule, it'll be fine for the tier 2 scene. Typically, it's the other way around, where the tier 2 scene is getting shafted while the 1% are just fine up at the top. Yeah, but it might actually be the opposite in potentially.
Some TOs might not want to run tournaments though as well. It depends what the scheduling looks like, because it seems like they booked up a significant portion of this. Whereas if you run a tournament on the same weekend as one of these events, like I don't think you're going to get. You're not going to get a return.
It would get moved. Yeah, it would get moved.
So what I'm imagining here though is when you look at this schedule, it does look like there's a week break in like the beginning of March between the end of challenges and the beginning of Masters, and there's maybe like a week break in the middle of April between Masters and challenges, that kind of stuff, where you could, in theory, you could run some. I don't know, what is the JBL Cup? Is that 50K, 25K, something like that?
50K.
Yeah, some tournament like that where you're okay. It's not the same level of prestige. It's not the same level of points, but it's an open cup where it's not as rigorous. There's more chance for upsets if you're a lower level tier 2 team. So you might be incentivized to play for that reason, because there's a chance at making it deeper when you don't have to play 72 billion BO3s in the challenges format. And if you're a top team that maybe didn't get the result that you want to be able to prove yourself, that kind of stuff. Like Unbox playing in the recent NSG tournament, for example, just to prove themselves after they got eliminated in unfortunate circumstances with Poach not being available. They come in, they just ruin that tournament. They prove to everybody that they're still a top team. Like that, those opportunities I think need to still be available in the scene for it to feel fresh.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Like look at July and August. Like the whole of July and August is one challenger event. Come on, please. There's got to be something in there.
Something also, I didn't look too much into it, but does this timeline align with like the update timeline that they have? Like, every 2 months they add like a new agent and like there's supposed to be like a new map because
I would imagine
wouldn't
so.
that be, yeah, I would assume that like in between the events there'd be like a new agent that comes out, but it would be pretty tragic if there was another first strike scenario where like the between qualifiers there's like a patch that comes in that like changes the game. I feel like it's
Yeah.
if Riot pull that now when they have like this whole timeline mapped out, I feel like that's pretty bad.
This is one of the biggest problems though that I think a lot of developers come over, and it's trying to mix the dev team with the esports and marketing team, and trying to get them on the same page. And in reality, the thing that takes priority always will be the dev team in terms of how often they can put out updates. And it's like it's a sad reality if you are purely all about the competition, the highest level of play. But at the end of the day, like the priority will most likely always be with the user base. So it's like, the updates come secondary. If they do manage to sync it up, I mean, fantastic. It would be, I mean, sick just in terms of the competition because it's the competitive integrity of the whole thing. But
I just want to. Sorry, go on, Shinobi. Go on.
No, I was gonna say it would just suck for like the situation like what you said, Josh, is like you get eliminated from the tournament, you're sitting around for a month, and then like there's an update like 2 weeks in, and it's like, well, everything you just did is kind of like useless, right? Like you have to go back now, and it's like wasted time. That's not even. It's like time that you could be using to improve or like working on things behind the scenes, but then it's like moot basically because you have to like go in again and change things or like everything you just worked on. And then they're like, all right, we're dropping a big update like 5 days before the qualifier. Like, have fun, guys. Like everybody, good luck. It's just like
I think they've done part of that though as well to try and combat the burnout issues that are so prevalent in CS, where you just have tournaments running all the time and the players get mega burnt out. I don't really know though because the it's kind of hard to tell. I feel like some esports pros are very antsy. Like if they don't have stuff to compete in, they just feel like they want to be playing, they want to be improving all the time. Like their work is their life kind of aspect. And then some are like, well, fucking hell, I'm just utterly burnt out if you make me play that much. So it's a difficult thing to try and balance from their perspective. I wanted to, can we bring up the timeline one last time though, Kurt? Because I think there's also another interesting aspect to this that is like a year down the road, but is going to become a reality. Like if this is the schedule moving forwards for years in the future, January and to some extent February and March during First Masters will be the fucking wildest off-season shit you've ever seen in Valorant. Because instead of everything being around like First Strike and etc., everything is going to be around champions. Like if they hype this up with any percentage of the amount that they hype up Worlds, which is what they're promising a show that's in some sense similar to Worlds, which is the biggest show for esports on the planet. Right? Like, bar none, as far as I'm aware, it's for the biggest esports. So if Riot are going to like slap it out on the table and try and put something equivalent when the esport is nowhere near the size, that is going to hype up everybody involved to perform at champions. And if you don't, you're going to be reshuffling to try and make it next year. Like the players are just going to feel like that is the pinnacle of competition that they should be striving for. And so I'm not even sure whether January will be enough for like weird, crazy off-season moves. I feel like you're going to be extending to like February and March, and people are just going to be, kind of sacking First Masters some of the time in order to try and compete from April onwards and just have like a really sick team to be able to work with. I think we could get some crazy off-season shit.
I wonder how that'll work, like a mid timeline in terms of roster moves. That'll be allowed, if there will be like spaces of time between each Masters where you could make a roster move, or
normally the way that it works in CS, right, is that you have to have 3 out of 5 of the same players in order to retain the legend spot, I think. And the legend, so I would assume it's similar.
But I think the difference though with like CS is like the majors are like its own thing, and like third party just dominates CS. Where like if Riot are doing all of this, it could be completely different, right? There could be like way different rule sets and things that you'd have to follow. But I imagine it would be something similar.
Yeah, you'd think, but sometimes it's not the case where, I don't know. You'd think there'd be some parallels between the games, but sometimes there's just not. Let's do some predictions from North America. What do you want, Josh? What do you want?
Nothing.
You going to say something?
No.
Okay, let's do predictions for North America.
I like this.
This is This is the
Get
thing.
that
I think
bracket
we've
up.
got all the experts here and me, and we can take a look at the bracket. Do we actually have the bracket, the seedings? We know what teams are playing which teams. Really small on our screens, but yeah, this is going to be shaping. Let's start with the first one then. Let's go over it. What is that? Envy Immortals.
Yep.
Yeah.
This, in my mind, just to kick things off, I think Envy should be taking this in a pretty dominant fashion. I think Immortals of the honeymoon period that we were talking about was shot up in. Obviously, they got a little bit unfortunate. Immortals recently with shot up having to go to the hospital, but they played with Shanks and they filled in to a reasonable level and managed to qualify. But Envy have been so consistently good. I feel like it's almost like you have to pick them here.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Yeah, I think so as well. I'm interested in Shinobi. What's your point of view on Envy? Because they're a team that really came up like hard over the course of, I guess, like the last 3 months. Honestly, they and even a little bit before that, and they've gone from being like a pretty solid like 4th best team in NA to now being arguably the 2nd best team in NA. What's your perspective from somebody who has played against them multiple times? Like, do you think they warrant the hype?
For the most part, I think they're good. I think people were like really high on them in practice from scrims. I never really felt like they were like absurd in prac, but I think that they have a good understanding. They have an in-game leader that knows what he's doing, and he's going to set the team. So like they're never going to be a team that's like really up and down, in my opinion. Like where Immortals, like in this matchup, it's like Envy are the better team, and I'd say 7-8 times out of 10 they should win. But a single elim format, Immortals are a team that can win, and they can upset Envy. I think if like Envy don't come to play, like I think Immortals can win this series even 2-0. But I think Envy should win the game. But I don't know, it's weird because Envy's a team even like way before with their old lineup. We've always played them close. Like in every series we've played has always been close. With this new lineup, I actually think in this new lineup, right, it was like a seeding match, but I think we actually played a overall like a stronger performance against them with this new lineup that I think is a stronger team overall than we had played them in the past. And I don't know if that's like what the reasoning for that is, but I think they're definitely like for sure a top 3 team. Like they're definitely really strong. And I think them having an in-game leader and having a structure is a big reason why they are such a good team, in my opinion. It's not really like obviously the players are good, but I think having a team identity and like a culture in the team is something that people really undervalue, and I think it's important.
Yeah,
it's a big part of their success.
With Envy as well, just the last few times that we've seen them, I feel they're one of the teams that have genuinely been better every consecutive time we've seen them in the last 3 or 4 tournaments or so. They've just genuinely been stepping it up every single time. I have a question for you, Shinobi. How do you feel about like on Envy with their players switching off and on the Omen from Duelist with Mummy and Food swapping? Do you think that's like, does that have a lot of impact on a team? Is that viable? Would you recommend for it, against it?
I think it ultimately comes down to the players' comfortability. Like if they're comfortable with the changes, like for me, I think it's like, I think something that made us better, like more consistently, was that we did switch. Like I was playing Sova and like Omen on some maps, and then I just like exclusively went to Omen, and then we put Skylar on Raze like almost exclusively and playing Duelist, and it helped us. But I wouldn't say that that's like you have to do that for a team. It's going to come down to that team specifically and whether or not they can make it work. I think Food is much better on like I think he's much better on like Phoenix and Omen than I'd say his Raze play was, and I think that they changed that and put Food on Phoenix a lot more. But I know it's definitely weird seeing Mame on agents like Omen.
Really
but I mean, I've seen him op on Cypher. And he's played a lot of really weird agents.
Played Sage as well.
Yeah, he seems willing to just do whatever that team needs. What do we think like what's the win con for Immortals? Because I feel like a lot of it is dependent on like obviously shot up, but for me, the player that stands out in my mind is JMO, and whether or not he can really perform at at some of the insane heights that we've seen him at, and then on other maps just be relatively non-existent.
One of the things.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was just going to say one of the things we've got to consider here is that there's a new patch as well. Yeah, and there's certain teams I think are probably going to be a little bit more suited as well to the switch up in comps, and Icebox being introduced as well, for an example. Like these are some major changes that could mean that we see some like round one upsets in the main event pretty quickly.
Yeah, you say that though, but I don't think that. I don't know. My read of Envy and Immortals is that I don't think either of them are really going to be like a team that's going to grab huge value out of Skye. I mean, I could be totally wrong here, but I think of Envy as a team that likes to that really excels by when they're on defense, getting a lot of value out of pushing the extremities, and they really value the duelists and the way that they can just kind of access those extremities when they're defending. I don't think that they're going to try some like complex team play setups with Skye. And I also don't think that Immortals, like for me, when you're talking about like Icebox, for example, I don't think Immortals would want to go there. I feel like that's definitely more of an Envy map. So I don't really see like the patch affecting this game in terms of adding more upset potential for Immortals. I think if anything, it just means that they are probably going to want to dodge Icebox and Split. And so it comes down to like, I don't know, Immortals are the lower seed and they have the weaker map pool here, I think, compared to Envy.
A lot can change though.
Yeah.
It can. I'm not saying that an upset is out of the realm of possibility here, but I think it's a tough win condition for Immortals.
It is.
And their players would have to be firing in order to win this game.
I also think, I don't think you'll see Icebox play it at all in this tournament until the final when it's BO5, because if you're the higher seed, there's no reason, in my opinion, to play Icebox against a team that's like, in theory, should be worse than you. Like,
sure,
it's a map that like no one really has figured out. There's literally no reason. And if you're the high seed, I feel like that's the map that you should be banning. In my, maybe teams won't.
Aspect.
Yeah, I just think like if you're in MV's position, like there's no way they're gonna play Icebox. Like they'll feel like we're the better team, we have the stronger map pool. There's no reason to play that. Like I really think for Immortals to win the game, they have to win Haven and Bind, right? Like those are the maps that they're gonna have to win. I don't think that they'll win.
What is this bracket? Where have we come up with this Frankenstein
cooking
bracket?
someone up in the lab.
So I can move the teams around. I just made made an entire account for this website.
But this is the different bracket.
Yeah, wrong bracket. Yeah.
Oh no.
It's a totally different bracket. I don't know how that's happened, but yeah.
Wait, where is this bracket? Where did you find this?
I think he's just made. He's just made it on challenge so that he can move the teams around. But it's yeah.
Anyway, should we move on to another team?
Yeah, I think there's serious upset potential in Renegades TSM.
You think there is in Renegades TSM?
Yeah, I think there's some serious upset potential here. I mean, when Renegades and TSM have played each other twice already, actually, in the qualifiers so far. Renegades beat them on Split each time. Now, that was back when TSM were playing the Viper Split, which who the hell knows whether they're going to continue with that or the triple duelist or whatever the hell. I have not been convinced in TSM for quite some time. I think that their individual players have been relatively impressive, but I think they've lacked that like identity that really has helped push TSM to the top in their past, where they feel like they know what style they want to play. I feel like they still don't really have a good idea of what style they want to play. So if they haven't figured that out and they're still kind of throwing shit at the wall here, I think there's a good chance that Renegades just takes this by winning like Split and Ascent. I don't think Renegades have a deep map pool, but I think Split and Ascent are extremely winnable maps, and it happens to be a BO3. So if you win both of those, you're through.
The thing about this matchup is, I would say if this was on the old patch, I think TSM win this 2-0. And my reason for that is that, like, when you're the underdog team, and if you're a team like TSM, and I don't know if they respect, I mean, I assume that they went into their match against Renegades in the past, like, not respecting them, like, not thinking that they, not prepping for them. I can't say this like for sure. I have no idea, but I would assume that they felt like just play our game. We're better than them. We're gonna win the game.
Yeah.
And like it seemed like Renegades, if you don't know how they're gonna play, like they'll punish you because they're really explosive. Like they have this really like fast-paced style, but I feel like they're not a deep team. Like they don't have a lot of experience. Like they're not a really deep team. Like their playbook is kind of like what it is, right? And I feel like they're a team that until they have more time together, like they're not going to be able to consistently beat teams that are better than them, unless individuals just like straight carry the performance, But because it's on this new patch and there's Skye that's in play, if TSM have no idea what Renegades are going to play, right? So if Renegades come up with new things and they play it, like they can win the game on that merit, like that random factor. But if things aren't changed, like if they play the same comp and style that they played in the last qualifier, I think TSM will win 2-0. But I still think TSM will win, but I think it'll be a close game.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, that has been my big question with Renegades since that tournament is just where are they going to actually take the strategic play moving forward? Because it wasn't particularly deep. It was explosive and it was well executed, and they had great post plant play as well. They had really decisive. I don't know who's calling on that team, but they were very decisive in their post plant play. A lot of post plant aggression. They were always trying to take map control with multiple players once they had the spike down, and they were doing it with a lot of pace. So I think there was definitely some positives to glean from their performance. But I just do wonder how far that will take them and how deep the team actually is. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Something about them though that it does strike me that they might be a team that is willing to be a bit more experimental. Like they might feel they have something up their sleeve with Icebox or with Skye, just something that's
I
TSM
could totally
wouldn't be
see
prepared
Renegades
for.
being the kind of team where if TSM don't immediately ban Icebox, it just gets played. Yeah. Like even though that's not, like you would expect them to tend towards split because they've beaten TSM on it before, but I think Renegades are the kind of team that would just be like, oh, we might as well give it a punt. Because they know that they're the underdogs in this situation. But they also, I think, though, that Renegades get undersold a little bit, too, because they get described as like this. What was it you actually that was tweeting this, Shinobi, about Renegade Strapbook being like run A, run B? Was that you?
That was actually just because Wardella tweeted that. I was just memeing because he had said it. But I mean, he's not wrong, but it wasn't like a disrespectful tweet.
Sure.
But
because I think though that that kind of perception underplays a little bit of how difficult it is to stop a team that's really explosive like that. Because even if you know that they're gonna do it, stopping them from doing it is a whole other question. And then I feel like a lot of the time when teams run bursts like that, the meta against teams like that has just been to try and play retake positions. Has been like, okay, if you're just going to burst out all of your utility to take the site, we'll give you the site and we'll keep all of our utility. We're not even going to use any of it, and we'll just play a really good retake against you. But that relies on you being really good at retakes and them not being that great at the post plans. And so I think the even the natural counter to how Renegades play, they're really good in the post plans. And like a lot of these teams are not that coordinated at being able to play good retake setups, especially on sites where you don't normally play retake setups, which, can apply to like B, for example, on split. Like very few teams play full retake setups on B. And it really catches teams off, I think. So yeah, I think actually then rather than them being like three-head Unga Bunga team that just bursts into sites, I think that it's a viable way of play. I don't know whether it should be moving forwards, but I do think it's a viable way of playing Valorant is to just fucking splooge onto a site and then try and win the post plan. I think that you might even see that more as the game trends in this with this patch.
It's hard to deal with because like you have to have the right agents in the spot. Like if you could have the counter and have the read, but if you know you could know like how to counter and execute, but if you have your Sova there or whatever, and then it's like you needed your breach and something else to stop the hit, it's like if you guess wrong, they just fly into the bomb site that's like weak, right? Like you could know, like on split, right? You could know their B execute and you know, like, okay, if we have like these agents here, we can just own them. But like they go A and like you're playing retake on A and they do their execute. It's all like it comes down to the post play, right? And it's like more random, right? It's not always going to be.
Yeah.
Well, it's like that playstyle doesn't work as much because the moment you know how people rush and you have an answer for it, any player can just be there and they can do the counter, right? But in Valorant, it's like way more player specific. Like you need to have the right people in the right spots way more often, and that's like a random aspect.
I think as well,
definitely.
if you try to play like a basic retake strategy against them, like if the idea is just to retake and your retakes are all right, they will push you when you were setting up your retake. I even remember in your match against them, one time on split, they planted on B and they just 3-man pushed into spawn and they hit a fat paranoia. And I think you actually killed them because somehow you were just out of range of it or something and you clean them up. But like they're willing to just plant the spike and immediately push 3 guys into their spawn while you guys were trying to set your retake up. Like that's the kind of thing that will catch teams out. It didn't in that instance because I think you got like a 2K off that play, but like that is the kind of play that will catch teams out very, I mean, with some consistency.
Yeah. I mean, it's smart on them because it's not like, I mean, they know that they have this like play style, but they're obviously thinking about like, okay, if we rush into this site and we use stuff, we have to have plans. Like they obviously have plans for how they want to push after the post plan, right? They're not just like one by one running and like panicking. Like it's definitely coordinated from them. Like they're a team that has like they might be one note, but they are thought out in like how they execute on the sites, and like they're really good at that style of play. And then also like Retro and Winsome, like these guys are absolute freaks with like using their abilities. Like
I
like
love
Winsome
watching Winsome.
using Winsome on the blast pack just plays. He's like really good at the movement with Rays, and Retro's like the kind of guy where. It's like what I was saying about how like you can be not getting a lot of kills and you can make impact. Like this guy will dash in a straight line right in front of you for his teammate to get the kill. Like this guy, he just doesn't care. Like he has no care on his life. And I mean, it's good. It's hard to deal with if people are playing like that because you don't expect people to just like throw themselves at you like that a lot of the time. And it's hard to play against. I think, especially when you're not ready for it.
Yeah. Still give TSM the win, though, I think, across the board, right?
Still
expecting TSM to win, even though we've just gassed up Renegades for about 5 minutes. But, I've always been a bit of a TSM doubter. And I've been kind of, I don't know, I just feel like they're a team that, you said it earlier in this podcast, we were like, TSM are a team that they tend to adapt pretty well to like the trends of the meta that is going on at a given time. I think that's pretty evident. Like the fact that this team is still relevant now when I thought they were going to drop off a long time ago into these patches, I think showcases that they can adapt to a degree. Not necessarily that they might be the best, but still expect them to be the favorite. So the next one is 100 Thieves T1. This is
the best game of the. Well, actually,
game.
I don't know whether this is the best game of the quarters because Envy Immortals should also be pretty good, but this absolutely could be the best game of the quarters.
I think it will be.
I think this is the hardest one to predict.
It definitely has to be, right?
T1 just getting better and better.
I mean, it's also just so many old school CS players playing against each other. It's such a fun game. It's like you could have ported this back in time and you'd just be wondering what the fuck's Spider is doing on the roster.
Yeah, I mean, my gut says T1.
Your gut says T1?
Yeah, it really does. I
think that's a reasonable. Like you can make arguments for either side. Yeah.
It is so close. So really, no matter which you pick, I think it's totally reasonable. But I'm thinking T1 and see, this is tough though because what I'm about to say applies to 100 Thieves as well. But sort of the trajectory that both of the teams have been on that we've witnessed over First Strike so far, I feel like T1 has improved considerably, and especially towards the very end of the second qualifier, they're really showcasing how far they've come in just whatever month and a half. But 100 Thieves as well made a lot of improvement in just their one showing, going from losing to TSM to like finding what looked like finding the confidence and in an individual sense to actually beat them the second time they played in the closed qualifier. So both teams had made some significant improvement, but I feel like T1 are really setting themselves up to actually be like a legit top 6, top 4 team potentially, depending on how far they can take this like spider rays theory with Skadoodle on Jett. Because it was more than a theory. In practice, it was genuinely effective. We had seen them using utility better than any previous point. They were getting so much value out of the rays, their bind attacks. So
personally, I think that even though there's more, maybe the trajectory of T1 is more compelling because we've seen them start from a much lower place, so you can really see like these guys are moving consistently upwards. To me, it doesn't make sense to go for T1 in this match because 100 Thieves are still going to be improving massively. And the improvements that they have made, although you've seen a much smaller section of the line is still moving at a considerable upwards pace when it comes to these guys' improvement. The improvement from them playing against TSM one week to playing against TSM the other week, the actual teams that they have wins over as well, their performance in like the Cloud9 game as well, when Cloud9 were playing really well. I think the quality of play has been higher than T1 overall, and I see no reason why 100 Thieves should stop improving at this point. Like I think that they will continue to get better and better. I just don't think I think that whereas T1 are perhaps in the middle of their improvement, where they started in a really bad spot, they're looking incredibly promising right now, and they're looking like they could achieve big things. I think 100 Thieves started at the promising. They started looking good right from the off, but with a few things that they had to really work on, and they've had just a really good foundation to keep building. I have high hopes for 100 Thieves, and I think that they should be considered favorites in this game.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. I think recency bias as well, thinking you've made a good point there with T1, just with the rapid improvements they've made in such a short period of time. Still, I still think this is probably going to be the best match of the quarters. Just looking at these two teams compete as well, just the history of it as well. It's very hard not to get excited when you see these two teams playing as well. I'm not going to predict. I'm going to be Switzerland in this one. I'm just going to stay neutral. I'm going to stay in the middle. But yeah, I mean, what's the overall consensus here? Shinobi, did you make your prediction?
It's tough because I think this matchup will come down to split, because like so neither of these teams really play split. Like it's probably the one map that they're like the weakest on, I'd say, in their map pool. And then with Icebox being in, it's gonna come down to like if T1, because T1 have the lower seed. If I were them, I'd be really sure that we can play split in this game and be ready to ban Icebox. And then like if 100 Thieves ban Icebox, you leave split in my opinion, and you punish them. That's like how I would be thinking about it if I was T1. But they could also just, I mean, T1 could also just feel like they're better on the other 3 maps, and they'll just play them on those maps. But like if I was T1, I would just ban Ascent, and I would play split. I would make sure that we're damn good and prepared on split and win on those maps, because I think T1 are pretty good on bind. How did like they have a really similar map pool. That's like the thing that makes the match really interesting.
Presumably, 100 Thieves have the higher seed here.
No, they do. They do. So, like, 100 Thieves is like they'll either ban Icebox or split, right? That's what I'm saying.
Right. I see.
If you were T1, you'd probably want to play. I mean, I don't know if you'd want to play Icebox. That's the thing. Like, you might want to play Icebox here. But
I mean, I think the question with the T1 maps are: do they try to ban Icebox, or do they stick to banning Haven? Or have they tried to work Haven into their pool, or Icebox into their pool?
I've seen T1 play a lot of Haven recently.
Yeah, they just started to at the very end, but that was like their insta ban for the majority period. Yeah.
I'd say in practice, T1 were quite good on Haven when we played them.
Yeah, see, that was the thing when we watched them as well. We were like, oh, T1 are pretty good on Haven, but they're banning it every series. But they were actually pretty good on it when we finally saw them playing it.
I think a lot of this game, in terms of the map veto, comes down to just a game of chicken over Icebox.
Yep.
Because I do agree with you. I think that even though T1 aren't that great at split, 100 Thieves just, I don't know. Do they even play that map? They're results are they're 0-7 on split, but I can't even remember when they played it, to be honest. They played against Envy, Sentinels, Cloud9, TSM, Homeless, FaZe, and T1. So they actually played against T1 on it, but that was
Back in the
ages ago. Oh, actually, no, that was like T1 Nerd Street Gamers in June. That's not even-
that was so long ago.
yeah, that is some horse shit stuff.
You don't even know what 100 Thieves are going to be practicing behind the scenes either. Like if
Exactly.
you're just one,
Right.
that's the thing that's
Yeah.
tricky too. Is like 100 Thieves could also be playing split and making that a strong map for them. So you could like fall into that as well. It's hard to know because like I doubt these teams have practiced against each other in a while. So
yeah, I mean, yeah. And even in a world where Bind, Haven, and Ascent all get played, this is still a really tough match to call.
Yeah, I mean, Bind. I think you have to call Bind and Ascent as both teams' best 2 maps from what we've seen so far. I feel.
Yeah,
I mean,
so.
it's almost certainly we're going to see both of those maps being played as well. I mean, it's so at the very least that is making for a damn interesting series. I mean, that's you're going to see probably the best of both teams on at least 2 of the maps.
Who are you predicting, Shinobi?
So if Ascent's in the pool, I think 100 Thieves will win if Ascent is played. Like I think 100 Thieves will win 2-1. If Ascent's not in the map pool, I think T1 will win, in my opinion.
Let's go with 100 Thieves moving forward then. And then the last game we need to predict is Sentinels versus FaZe Clan. And he's cooked up something in the lab while we were gone. While we were talking. Look at this. I mean, I think he's got every possibility. He's fucking Doctor Stranged it. He's cooked up every possible bracket we could have. Sentinels, FaZe Clan. I mean, does anyone want to play devil's advocate and argue for FaZe Clan here? I know they've been making some improvements, but I can't see them taking the win over Sentinels.
I think they have somewhat of an all right matchup here in terms of like style. I think FaZe want to be like pushing and playing against an aggro team that's going to give them aim duels a lot. And they, in the world in which Sentinels lose this, it's because they're giving them too many ego duels and FaZe are winning. That's the only world where I see Sentinels losing this, is that occasionally when Sentinels start losing, their individual players try and make more and more plays in order to recover them. And if FaZe are really like on point, I can see a world in which they might be able to scrape through 2-1. But FaZe would have to be individually playing like better than they've ever played, I think, in order to win this series. And Sentinels would have to like mentally collapse themselves into that place where they just take aim duels constantly. I don't really see it happening though. I think it's the least likely of all of the quarterfinals to end in an upset.
Yeah, no complaints here if we want to just shift it along.
Yeah, I
to
just
Sentinels.
a hard agree with everything you just said. So.
Yeah. Do we want to make predictions for the semis into the grand finals?
Fuck it, yeah. I mean, let's just make it quick because I mean, who the hell knows what's happening?
Just hypothetical matches.
Yeah, MVTSM. What do we think? Let's just. I don't even want to hear justification. Shinobi, what are you predicting?
Damn. I'll go TSM 2-1.
Okay,
Ooh,
TSM
wow.
2-1. That's interesting. Josh, what are you going with?
I'm going with Envy. I think Envy looking like the better team at the moment.
Yeah, Wyatt.
I'm giving that an NV 2-1.
Yeah,
I'll just say I think Envy are the better team, but I just like to be the bad guy, so I'll go with TSM.
Okay, well, yeah, tough luck. I'm going to go Envy as well. So there you go. It's there's no tiebreaker. 100 Thieves, Sentinels.
I've got an important question for you though. Is Dapper on the clause? Because that is going to influence.
Is Dapper on the clause in the main event on a Friday afternoon?
Does he have a claw addiction on a Friday afternoon? And are they running Sinatra on Jett? Because if both of those are not true, then I think Sentinels wins this.
Yeah.
I think Sentinels as well.
Gotta give it to Sentinels.
Yeah, I
do think there's potential.
Yeah, there is an argument. There is an argument to be made for 100 Thieves for sure. But I don't think Dapper being on White Claws is one of them. I don't think that's even an option.
No, I think though that Sentinels would have to be like, to me, Sentinels at the moment are still existing in my head as the number one team because I'm giving them a pass in like the qualifier stage and thinking that they're going to have ramped up their game pretty significantly, like in terms of the prep work that they've done, in terms of how coordinated they look, sick playing a lot more, putting more, literally more time into Breach and Raze because nothing is wrong with that guy's individual skill, but like a bit of utility usage and positioning on the breach, and then a little bit more utility on the raise as well, and that team is going to be pretty elite again, I think.
It's funny because I was watching Sentinels on. I was like doing a VOD review on my stream, and I was watching Sick on the raise, and like he just looks so like visibly uncomfortable playing the agent, like in terms of how he moves with the blastbacks. But he's just so good. Like he's just so mechanically insane that like he's like jumping in a straight line in the air with the raise satchels, like not moving at all. But he's just like mowing everybody down, just like dominating. Like, he's like 24-6 or something in this game that I'm watching, but like the way he's using the blastbacks is just so funny. Like he's never played the agent, but he's just so good that it doesn't even matter.
Yeah, just pencil jumping all over the place.
It is also the way that we've printed this bracket is really unfortunate for Envy, because like I think that Envy have a bit of a mental block when it comes to Sentinels, and I think that the styles match up pretty poorly for them as well. Sentinels seem to eat the Envy aggression alive, and the map pool doesn't match up well for them either. I think that 100 Thieves Sentinels almost needs to go the other way for Envy to secure this win. Like if Hastro wants the triple title or something that he's running for, having just won the Rocket League Championship Series as well. Like if he wants to be able to get this victory, he needs to invest some money into the 100 Thieves practice. He needs to go and bulk up his competition in order to ensure that they make the grand final.
You don't see them winning in the finals here. I mean, if Sentinels...
I think it's possible, but it's not been done before, and it seems like Envy always perform worse against Sentinels.
I think the thing that's really interesting is because 100 Thieves and Sentinels are on the same side of the bracket. I think Envy's best chance to win is actually if 100 Thieves beat Sentinels in the semis, because I think Envy will beat 100 Thieves if they play. I could pretty confidently. I think Envy will win, but I think against Sentinels, I think they just have from the games that I've seen in the past, I think Sentinels have always had the edge on Envy. That's not to say that can't change, because Envy are really good, and I wouldn't be surprised if they won the whole thing. But I think if this was the bracket, I think I favor Sentinels to win.
Do you think the fact that the finals is best of 5, like the first legitimate best of 5 we've seen in a while, is like, do you think that has any sort of say in it? Because we're going to be seeing every single map being played.
So
maybe.
I don't know what maps Envy have been prioritizing or practicing, but I know Sentinels can play all 5 maps.
Right. Okay. Well, there you go. We heard it here first. Sentinels win everything.
Yeah, I mean, Sentinels have been bragging about how good their Icebox is as well, which might just be all fucking hot air. But I think they're the kind of team that would actually perform really well on Icebox, because a lot of it is like defensive aggression. It's a lot of like taking aim duels. Their players are cracked. Like, I think that team would just be really good there. I also think Envy arguably could be too.
Yeah.
The map pool is just shite though when these two teams face off, because Envy are a really good team on split, but Sentinels are probably the best in NA on split. And so they struggle there. Envy aren't as good on Haven, even though Sentinels have historically been kind of weak there. So Sentinels get that map every single time as well. And Ascent just never even gets reached in these map pools. Like, but by the time you even get to Ascent, Envy have already lost, even if they're able to claw that back. So the problem is getting through Bind. Honestly, for Envy, like that to me is the big one. Like if they have figured out how to make Food and Caboose excellent on Bind, and they can sneak a win over Sentinels, which is difficult anyway, because those B hits for Sentinels where Sinatra's just running through are so nasty good. But if you can figure out a good plan for Bind, then you could potentially sneak out a win here.
I think Envy should look to Ascent. I think that's like the one map, like if they were going to do the pick order, I think Ascent is like the map that Envy should try to play early. And if they work on Haven, I think that they can like Ascent and Haven, I think are the 2 maps that Envy need to win in this series. Like Icebox is going to be, who knows? Like I have no idea what will happen. It goes to 5 maps, but like I think Sentinels, I mean, Split is like also kind of 50-50, I think, because both these teams are good on Split. And it'll come down, I think, for Sentinels is like, how much have they changed their split? Because like the times I've seen them play in these recent qualifiers, it's like the same look Sentinels that I saw 3 months ago, right? So like that's kind of an advantage for Envy if Sentinels don't change. And like based on the information that I've seen, is like it doesn't look like Sentinels are too pressed about really changing a lot of things on that map. Obviously, they can. There's nothing like preventing them from doing so. But yeah, I think from what I've watched, I think Sentinels look really, really good on like bind, and yeah, bind and like split. The other two maps are good on, but I think that like Envy can win those, like Haven and Ascent.
Interesting. So Sentinels win it all is like the general consensus here for First Strike in North America. Let's do EU. I kind of want to I don't want to say briefly go over it, but we're going to be, I think, speeding it up a little bit. We're giving it the same sort of treatment that the rest of the world gives EU, just like kind of looking over it a little bit, not really paying too much attention. But the EU bracket, do we have the actual complete seeding? The round ones for the first round.
By the way, this was done. I don't know whether North America was done the same, but they took all of the people that got through the first qualifier, and then they just randomly assigned teams that got through the second qualifier.
Yeah, that's
really.
That's not how they did it in NA.
Yeah, so again, EU just comes up with new ways of fucking shit up.
Yeah. NA was seeding all the way, so winning the second qualifier got your matchup from the first qualifier.
Yeah, so that's how we've ended with this bracket, where Nolpenki and Purple Cobras are on the same side of the bracket, and Summon have got Purple Cobras. So Summon have got like not a bye because they are the weaker of the top four teams, but they've got a pretty easy road to the semifinals, and FPX have got an easy road to the grand finals. Honestly,
can you zoom in a little bit, Kurt? I can't read. Just in general. Okay, thank you. Okay, there you go.
By the way, for anyone wondering who's watching at home, Auglas are the Team Prodigy team. Prodigy are an agency that are trying to like represent their players, and so it's just a team made up of the people who aren't signed to an organization at the moment. That's why Prodigy as a team always cycles.
Did
their
they
players
change their name
so
to Auglas just to not confuse potential sponsors?
Yep, to make it sure that it's perfectly clear these guys do not have an org. Sign them, they're good. Literally, that's the only reason. Plus, it's not even like you have to sign this full team. It's like they're an agency. They don't give a fuck whether you sign the full team or whether you sign like 3 of them and then 3 guys they have on the bench. Like, they just want these guys to get signed, to get out.
Let's start with the beginning. Team Liquid, Team Heretics. I've got undying loyalty to Team Liquid for some reason. So I mean, I would assume that this match would be going their way.
This is easily the most competitive game in the first round of First Strike that I've seen across any region.
Yeah,
like this is absurd because
on the law, the Bible.
Yeah, I mean, Liquid. We haven't even seen enough of them with their new team. Like, there's been one broadcasted game of them playing with Scream on Jett. One game of them playing with Scream on Jett. They've been winning all the BO1s against teams, which is good because Liquid are historically a team that actually gets upset in BO1s by low-level teams. But Heretics are extremely dangerous. They have mega high individual skill across the board. They've got a really interesting style where they use a lot of utility. They're still running Sage on every map. I don't know how to call this game. It's impossible.
Yeah, this would be perceived as upset potential, and if you do want to frame it that way, there is just an excess of upset potential oozing out of Heretics. Like they absolutely could win this, which would, I think, surprise most most
the
people,
thing is, though,
for sure, because we just haven't seen much from Heretics.
It might not even be an upset. That's the thing.
Right, that's what I mean.
There isn't enough data to even know whether that would be an upset or whether we should consider Heretics to be the better team. We just haven't. There's not enough game tape to be able to look over to tell whether Liquid or Heretics are better. I'm inclined to bet on Heretics here.
Yeah, I haven't seen any Heretics games. I only know, I know Lowell and Nuki from CS, and they were both really good players. But the other 3 guys I'm not familiar with, so I have to go with Liquid just because of like the little that I know. But I wouldn't be surprised like if Heretics could win the game. I have no idea for this one, to be honest.
I don't know. I'm stammering. I don't know what to call. I mean, it is really tough. I might go Liquid. I'm at like a 57% to 43%. if I'm really trying to
Jesus
break it
Lord.
down. So I'm going to give it to Liquid by the slimmest of margins.
By the way,
Okay.
So all-time Heretics have not played against any, major teams. They've had like BO1 against NIP, and the rest of their wins are over people like Giants, Need More DM. They've won a bunch of tier 2 tournaments, but they are 12-0 on Bind, 14-0 on Haven, and then 6-1 on Ascent. So like they have been crushing people at that kind of level. Like the level of consistency is extreme.
Yeah. I think based off of, I don't know. I just think Liquid would take this one.
Undying love.
Yeah, undying loyalty to Team
Lust for
Liquid,
Scream.
to the UK players and Scream. Yeah. And also just I think I have a lot of faith in the kind of vision that Sliggy as a coach has for this team, and their kind of philosophy when it comes to, I think, just tackling the game as a whole. Like we're heading into a new patch. This team seems very prepared for new patches whenever they come up. They seem to put a lot of emphasis on adaptability. So I think Liquid should have the advantage here.
Here's my pitch though. Map veto selection. Liquid get the first ban. What do they ban? I don't know. Bind, Haven, Ascent, something like that. Maybe they ban Icebox actually to start with. Heretics, I think, immediately just ban Split because it's Liquid's best map and Heretics never play it. And now you have a wonderful map pool for Heretics. Yeah. And you've banned the best map for Liquid.
I mean, the way I look at this is,
I think this is prime for Liquid to go out and people be molding about like, oh, Liquid get upset again. Oh, they can never make it deep, when actually people don't understand like Heretics are fucking good.
Look at this fucking bracket as well though. Look at who's below them. G2 and August. Like, this is absurd. Like in terms of it's very lopsided.
Yeah.
It's very lopsided.
Because they did random allocation of opponents.
Yeah, but I think we should predict.
It is so tragic, honestly.
Given how little game tape there is, given how little game tape there is, I think we should predict up to the semis and maybe just leave it and give people games to watch in our predictions. You know what I mean? Because beyond that, it is just pure fucking. We are just throwing darts blindfolded. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
sure. So wait, are we going?
I want to go with Liquid.
Heretics. We should put Liquid in the semi.
Yeah,
I want to go
we'll
with
put Liquid there. But if Heretics win, people shouldn't be surprised. You shouldn't be rushing to your favorite forum and
and like for example, there's no reason to blow up Team Liquid if they don't make the semifinals. You know?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Don't overreact. If
they would go out in 5th to 8th, but they're definitely a better team than August, Purple Cobras, and No Pinky. So don't worry about it. They're like a worst case 5th best in EU.
G2 and August. I mean, you have to go with G2. I think
G2 are winning.
In this scenario, like G2, just they're so well rounded across so many weeks of competition. It's
even August's best map as well is also G2's best map. So that's a really
unfortunate
tough
matchup
situation
for August.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because I would say Orglis are probably like the 4th best team in this bracket, right? Like, and I think they're gonna probably get 8th place. Like, from what I've watched of Orglis play, like I thought they were pretty good. I haven't seen too much, but Happy's been really good. I think on like the raid.
He has.
And, they have some good pieces. Like I know Pipson. He was actually a coach in CS. But their whole team, like they're pretty good, and I think it's unfortunate for the G2 matchup. I think they could maybe get a map, but I think G2 will win.
Yeah,
pretty confidently.
Yeah, I think it's pretty rough for Auglis. Like, I think they had upset potential against many of the other teams that they could have gone up against here.
Yeah,
they have pretty decent upset potential against Liquid. They definitely could have beaten Summon FC. I don't really think that like playing against FPX would have been reasonable, but those two teams, that's like half of the potential opponents that they really could have beaten, and they just happened to run into G2.
All right. Football Club versus Purple Cobras. This is.
I have no idea. No idea.
Oh my god. Yeah, I mean, I look at this bracket and that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I mean, yeah.
I asked Josh what he thought of Purple Cobras, and he was like, short answer, not good. Long answer, not that good. I was like, all right. Like,
I mean, that's genuinely what I think, though. Is like Purple Cobras are where, in my opinion, where you watch the tape of European teams and it starts to fall down quite a bit. So like down to the Purple Cobras, which is maybe 15th, something like that in Europe. If I was to roughly say where they are in the rankings, up to that point, things are looking pretty solid. And then once you get down to like Purple Cobras and Olpenki, who obviously most people wouldn't rate as top 8 teams in Europe, they'd have them much further down, especially actually when you consider like I'm still ranking like Turkish and CIS teams in there as well, which isn't quite fair for this tournament. But, as Europe as a whole, it seems to drop off a little bit once you get to that point. So I just don't really see how they would win. I think Nolpenki have the bigger upset potential, even if they're playing against FPX, but it's still there. It's very minimal.
Yeah, it's so minimal. FPX are just going to eat them up. Little snack. They're just going to aggress into the jaws of FPX.
I really like FPX as a team.
Yeah, I do too. I want to see some Angel Viper on Bind. That's what I want to watch.
Yeah, they're just. I think they're a really nice team in terms of just their mid rounds, and they have great game plans and executes. I really like FPX.
I am interested to see whether FPX pull out something weird again, like that Viper comp. I don't think we've ever seen the way that Angel thinks about it. Actually, he just did an interview with Immortal Minds as well, which was really interesting, where he was talking about, like, from his point of view, he believes that Viper should be played as the main smoker of a team, because otherwise you're giving up too much. I'll tell you right now, I've watched all the Viper VODs the top teams playing. No one else has that opinion. No one else has that same opinion. Like, everyone else just believes that you're too limited with what you can do as Viper if you have to be like the guy that smokes everything off, because then you're wasting all of your Viper util on just doing what you could have done with an Omen and get more value out of it anyway. So it's such a weird way of thinking about the game, but it works for FPX because it allows Shao to play the duelist again. Like, instead of being a secondary supportive player, you now have this guy who used to be the star player of Party Pirates, who just comes out and reminds everyone why he's such a god and just plays the Phoenix and owned. I don't know. There's something really creative and interesting about FPX. They think about the game so differently to everyone else.
You wanna? I don't think we should do predictions past semis. I feel like it's disingenuous. We've seen so little.
I think if these are the semis, the predictions are pretty obvious.
Pretty evident, right? G2 and FPX in the finals.
Yeah. I think the
final that we deserve.
I think that the thing is, FPX have literally got a free road to the final, because Summon FC are like baby FPX. They play a very similar style. They're a little more explosive, but they're like baby FPX. Yeah. And I don't see them winning that matchup, because you're more favored if you play someone with a totally different style that you can try and counter or work against, something like that.
I mean, Kurt's, we know who Kurt's rooting for. Just going to put it out there. Seems like G2. I
just think this bracket is an absolute joke. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I mean, you guys have already talked about it enough, but like, really? Why would you randomize the seeds after doing tournaments for the seeding?
Agree.
It really is just a tragedy.
I think, though, that this is the tournament for FPX. I really believe in FPX.
You think FPX are going to take it?
Yeah, I think FPX win this one. I think that G2 are still figuring out what their new style is right now. They've got a much better handle on it than some other teams. They still know what the style is, but they haven't quite got there yet. And unless that has made some significant development across the past couple of weeks, I think FPX have just got a head start. Like, they knew what they wanted to play in the meta. They've been constantly refining. They've even worked out weird comps that they want to play. I think this is the time for FPX to win the tournament.
I'm happy with that if other people are.
I think I would have predicted the same, honestly. Though obviously, again, it's super close final. It could go either way, but yeah, I think this is finally the moment for FPX.
Oh, yeah. Any comments? Any final words here, Shinobi, before we move on from EU?
No, I think FPX
as a region.
I think FPX are great. I like watching them play, and I hope they win the series. But
do you ever look at like the European teams and other stuff and try and incorporate, or like, I know obviously that a lot of people have been watching Korea, because those visions, or at least they've been watching other people who've watched Korea. It's like a game of like a game of whispers where they're like, oh, this Vision Strikers has a really cool strat, and then the next NA team picks it up and they're like, oh, this NA team has a really good strat, and then eventually it boils down to the point where T1 are like flashing through a lamppost in tiles where it doesn't catch anyone, and they're like, this is, I can see the inspiration here came from Vision Strikers, but I can't understand how it got to this point. It's been mangled and mutated as it went from team to team. Anyway, my point was, I know that teams in NA have watched some Vision Strikers play, but do you know of others that draw inspiration from other areas of the world?
No, I don't really know. I feel like the NA teams, they kind of just copy other NA teams. I don't really see like a lot of teams doing like things I see outside of like the Vision Strikers strats. Like I don't see like a lot of NA teams copying like the EU playstyle as much. Like everybody in NA loves Phoenix and plays Phoenix, and I think that like I think NA is like way more aggressive in terms of like how they want to play the rounds out, where like EU seems a little more methodical, slower paced. Not always, obviously, but yeah, and like for us, it was mostly just like we watch other regions for inspiration, but we never like we're like, let's take that and just like copy and break it down. We try to like understand like why this might work and then try to fit it into like our play style against like the teams that we're playing against. Because just because something is good, like, and it works in like a specific region, it's like not always going to just work 1-to-1 against a different play style, right? You need to have like adaptations, and that's kind of like why we just draw inspiration from those things.
How much Korean First Strike has everybody watched?
Like, I haven't watched any.
Yeah.
All of the Korean First Strike at the moment has just been good teams playing against bad teams. There has, because there wasn't any big like group stage or qualifier or something like that. The teams, literally, the top teams haven't even played against each other yet once.
Crazy hamster. That's a team. Yeah. So are we expecting Vision Strikers to take this event? Is that because every time we talk about Vision Strikers every week, it seems like the region is steadily catching up to them, slowly but surely. They're getting closer and closer and closer.
To an extent, like I think Cloud9 Korea, they should beat Crazy Hamster, and then there should be some upset potential there against Vision Strikers. I think it's possible they win that. Though
actually,
I still favor Vision Strikers a bit. I do think Cloud9 Korea, they've got a pretty good chance.
Yeah, Cloud9 Korea have got a really improved individual roster since I think the last time that they played against them. So there is some serious potential for them to do work. The problem is that they haven't had the most dominant run ever through the qualifiers. So, they lost to Quantum Strikers. They had a 2-1 game against Lunatic High. So it's not like Cloud9 Korea have changed their roster and suddenly just been rolling everyone. And you're feeling really excited about the chance of two big super teams meeting. It's like Cloud9 Korea do look better than the last time they played, but are they good enough to be able to take down Vision Strikers? That definitely still remains to be seen. But that semifinal, you should definitely tune in for, because not only is it a great potential match, but even if it isn't, the Korean teams love to like save set strats for these big games. And so you just know that there's been months of prep time now where Cloud9 and Vision Strikers are gonna use those set strats in that semi. So even if the game itself is shite, you'll still see new things and like development of different set plays. So even if the game is bad, you should definitely tune in and watch. I mean, it is at fucking midnight on December the 5th, but I'll be watching it anyway.
Yeah, who are the favorites then coming in to literally be in the finals? I mean, Vision Strikers, Cloud9 Korea.
T1 Korea, I think, on the lower bracket.
I mean, if you look at the very bottom there, A&G Dark Horse, this is the best quarterfinal. This is the only good quarterfinal, honestly, is between A&G Dark Horse and T1 Korea. A&G Dark Horse are a team that has made it through a lot of the like BO1 format pretty consistently. They look like a pretty solid roster. But T1 Korea, to me, are like the definition of a team that saves it up for the big games. So I don't know. And also TNL Esports, that's the old Quantum Strikers. Those guys were the sister team of Vision Strikers, and they just got signed by an organization because they were like way too good to be a sister team. They're arguably the second best team in Korea, and they were the sister team to Vision Strikers. So the whole bottom half of the bracket if you just follow T1 Korea and ANG Dark Horse, should be really good all the way through.
Interesting. Okay, let's move over to Brazil as a region. This is like in my mind, it feels this is kind of I don't know. It's all over the place because there's so many good teams at any moment on this main event.
Before we move on, though, did you guys know that the Korean playoffs are on LAN?
Oh, they are.
Oh, they are.
Yeah, I heard that they were possibly going to be.
So Brazil is on LAN. We knew that for a while.
Yeah.
And Korea, they just announced, I think like almost exactly a week ago, that they're going to be held on LAN in Seoul. So all of those playoff games, you're going to be able to like tune in, see all of the players, see them play against each other. It's going to be a LAN environment. We'll see how that affects the players. There's like so much more upset potential because certain players might be onliners, and this is like a totally different environment for them to be able to play in. So I think that would be pretty. It's also only got 40 seats because of coronavirus.
Yeah.
So there's only 40
it's still a
people
live
going to be there,
audience.
but
It's
it's
pretty,
still it's still
pretty
awesome.
sick. I mean, the rewards of a society that takes COVID seriously. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
That is pretty cool. Yeah. All right, Brazil as a region. This is kind of crazy actually. I'm really excited for First Strike Brazil because I feel like there are so many opportunities for just upsets and fucking mental gameplay across the board. Like you've got Game Landers, B4. What is that? What did Fusion Fraggers change?
Yeah, they became Vorax.
Vorax. They got signed by Vorax.
Yeah, they got signed by Vorax, but they kept their title sponsor of Fusion, so they just kind of fused the names.
Yeah, I mean, this is. I think it's going to be pretty fun to watch. If anything, it's going to be fun.
Oh yeah, every single one of these games in the quarterfinals is a good game. Every single one of them. Like there's some that are where you have extreme favorites, like Vorax Fusion are definitely favored. They're like arguably. Well, where would you put them? Like second best, probably in Brazil.
Well, I don't even know who you'd have as number one right now in Brazil.
Well, exactly. How do you even do the rankings? Also, Brazil has been running a lot of tournaments at the same time as First Strike is going on. So these teams have been like, they've been playing tournaments for money at the same time as playing tournaments for qualification. And so you have like a lot of information about like which teams are actually coming up in the scene. Like this Imperial team at the bottom is really on the come up as well. They've been winning a lot of decent games.
Yeah, the semifinals though are going to be. You all right?
Christ, yeah, I don't know. There's just an explosion in my building or something.
The semifinals are going to be actually pretty ridiculous though. Like if you look at, I don't know, probably Game Landers. If I had to say versus B4, I think they'll beat Team 1. But like Game Landers versus B4 is a sick game. Pain Gaming versus Fusion. That's a ridiculous game. Yeah, genuinely some insane games in this bracket. If you haven't gotten a chance to watch Brazilian Valorant much, it's ridiculous levels of skill. I mean, the individual skill in the scene is just out of control. But yeah, this is actually this might be the best bracket of all of them to some extent.
Yeah.
Just in terms of how close the games are going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. This one's going to be awesome. Like it's going to be insane.
All right. There's other topics in our run of show, but I'm just gonna answer a couple of the common questions here. We got one of them: should the classic right click be removed? Yes, is the answer. Does running while spraying need a nerf? Yes, is the answer. And we're on our final topic, which is Wyatt's weekly award. So,
I think they should keep the right click classic. I like jumping around and.
I think it should be nerfed.
I
don't like the fact that I have won eco rounds off the back of it. Like it's, I don't know.
I think it's okay to win. My problem is like when one method of shooting the gun is always the best method. Like I think that's the problem. Is like even at mid range, you're never gonna be wanting to like.
Is your weekly award the classic?
No.
Does it go to the classic?
No, it doesn't.
Okay. What does Wyatt's weekly award go to today?
Okay, my weekly award this week. I'm going to give it to someone who stepped up the past 2 weeks, really. Deserves a little credit. And that man is Android. from Anbox.
Oh.
Not only did he tie the record for most kills in a game with 41 against NRG while playing with a coach, just trying to drag his team over the finish line in one of the most ridiculous performances we've seen in professional Valorant. Yeah, I mean, just an incredible performance then. And then the next week to come back and just slam. I mean, Anbox just slams throughout pretty much the entirety of this NSG tournament. They dropped 1 or 2 maps, but Android's stats were just ridiculous. Like a 0.99 kills per round, 174 ADR, just actually slammed. So I think he definitely deserves some credit. He's been on fire for that team for the past couple weeks, and it was also nice that Anbox, you know, despite it being obviously not as, the Nerd Street Monthly, not as prestigious as First Strike, but it is nice for them to have an opportunity so soon after the unfortunate situation with Poach to actually show what they're made of again, and Android just playing out of control yet again. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's so unfortunate for Anbox overall, though, because it's a similar situation to Immortals, but Immortals managed to kind of get through with the help of Shanks, whereas, you know, Anbox tried, but they just couldn't quite make it over the line with Warden, with their coach playing. But I saw people on Reddit saying this, and I'm inclined to agree as well, is that I think Anbox would have made the main event if they had been able to play with their full roster. Like they seem like they are a top 8 team in North America. It's hard to rank them there at the moment because they don't actually have the wins, but just when you look at how they play and you look at the level of performance that they're able to put out and the coordination between their players, they seem like they're in that caliber.
Yeah. They really do. So yeah, I'm excited to see more of them in the future. And I like us. I mean, credit to the team as well. They just have an excellent system that puts Android in prime position to be a star player as well. Like they seem like a very selfless team. Like they do put the actual teamwork first. Like the players aren't particularly concerned about like trying to make individual plays. Like they really are setting him up to succeed, and he takes advantage of it.
Yeah. All right, cool. Let's wrap the episode. I mean, I'm down to go take a nap. I'm fucking tired. Yeah, thanks for joining us, Shinobi. It's been a pleasure. Yeah, I've been appreciating your insight as well. It's been nice to have a pro player on and get that kind of extra additional insight, I suppose, into like the North American scene we wouldn't get normally. Is there any like socials that I guess? Well, actually, your socials are right below you right now on a lower third, so you don't even need to shout them out. Go follow Shinobi on social media. Yeah. Listen, I'm struggling with wrapping this. Can we just end it here? Or do I need to say something else? Like leave a comment or like or something? I don't know. Thanks for watching. Bye.